So good evening, everyone. This is the Great Barrington Planning Board meeting for Thursday, January 26th. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's July 16, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of the public body. This meeting of the planning board will be conducted in person and by a remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with the right and or requirement to attend the meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public and committee members may attend the meeting in person, and those who wish to do so may attend remotely by following the instructions on the agenda. For those who are not in person, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. And pursuant to MGL 7C 30A Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of the public body or may transmit the meeting through any medium. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recordings. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. The listing of the agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. In addition, per section 241(1) of the town code, except for procedural and housekeeping matters, town residents shall have the right to address a board on any item that requires a vote. At a time before a board votes on that item, such residents will be allowed as much time as the proponents of an item is permitted to have. So this meeting is being recorded. We'll start with a roll call attendance. Pedro?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye. Recording in progress.
That's exciting.
Mel?
Here.
Jonathan?
I am present.
Brandy here, and Jeremy is not here at the moment. Okay, so we will move on to Form As. I don't believe we have any.
No.
Okay, seeing no Form As, we'll move on to minutes of January 14th, 2023. Do we have a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Jonathan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Malcolm. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Malcolm?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Brandy? Aye. Jackie? No, you don't get to vote on that one. Joe?
Aye.
Okay, great. Motion passes. Item number 3, site plan review for 82 Railroad Street, request from Jeremy Bromberg et al. OBCC LLC for a 1-year extension of the site plan approval granted by the planning board on January 27, 2022 for a marijuana retail establishment in a B zone at 82 Railroad Street. Do we have representatives?
Jeremy's on Zoom.
Okay, hello, Jeremy.
Hello,
How are you?
doing well, thanks. And thank you for recognizing me.
Sure, go right ahead and tell us what's up.
So in the years since we've been here, 2022 was simply an awful year for fundraising for many industries, but certainly cannabis, where 2021 investors put $1.6 billion into the industry. And in 2022, they put in $300 million. So an 80% drop, and that's across the country. So we've been challenged to raise money. However, we are in fact making it through, and I'm here to tell you that there actually is light at the end of the tunnel. Finally, it's been a long slog. You may have heard about the place in Northampton that had to close. There are going to be I think you're going to hear a lot more of that this year in Massachusetts. But right now, I think we're in a position to move forward. We're just trying to make sure we have the money lined up before we start working on it. But it's been a challenge to do so. It's simply that.
Okay, great. So you're here asking for a 1-year extension on the site plan approval previously granted.
Yes, please.
I will ask board members if they have any questions, and Jeremy, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Malcolm, do you have any questions?
No.
No. Jonathan, any questions for you? No. Jackie, any questions?
No.
Pedro, any questions?
Nope.
No. Jeremy, I know you're getting situated, but do you have any questions?
not have any questions.
Okay, or do I? So if no one has any questions, we'll need a motion to grant a 1-year extension for the site plan approval for OBCC LLC at 82 Railroad Street.
So moved.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Second.
Thank you, Malcolm, for seconding. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Malcolm,
Aye.
Jonathan,
Aye.
Pedro,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Brandy, aye. All right. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Good luck.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Item number 4 on the agenda is the special permit public hearing for 148 Maple Avenue, which is a continued hearing from December 8th, 2022 and January 12th, 2023. An application from 148 Maple Avenue LLC, PO Box 67425, Chestnut Hill, Mass, care of Nick Arienti, for the conversion of the former nursing home to a multifamily use at 148 Maple Ave in Great Barrington. Application filed for section 8.1 and 10.4 of the zoning bylaw. So we need a motion to reopen the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Jonathan. We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Malcolm. Seeing no discussion, Malcolm, your vote.
Aye.
Jonathan,
Aye.
Pedro,
Aye.
Jeremy.
Aye.
Randy, aye. Okay, so we are reopened. Good evening, gentlemen. Would you like to present the revised materials for us this evening?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Great.
you may sit or stand, whichever you are more comfortable
I'm gonna
to.
put my stuff down.
Totally
over here,
fine.
Charles. Sometimes I'm better talking than standing.
You need a gavel?
What?
No, I have one.
Let's not give you one of those now. So thank you for having us back this evening and for having the patience to allow us to make the revisions that were suggested and for us to do that comprehensively. So I'm here again with the owner, Charles Goldman.
Welcome back.
Representing the owner. Also, we have portions of our team here with us tonight on Zoom. There's Kaspari Hoffman of AT5 Studio, the architect. In addition to Mark Reynolds and Mike Parsons available also on Zoom to discuss and answer any questions relative to the site plan.
Nick, do you want them to be able to be seen and speak, or you
Yeah.
just want Mike? Do you just want Mike and then kind of available, or?
They can be available for the moment. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna present an overall summary of the information that we have addressed. Changes made that you can look out for. So I'll provide a general summary of that, and then they're gonna really present the substance
Okay.
because it's really their field to present on. A lot of the questions really geared toward those specialties in particular.
So I just invited Mark and Mike to be panelists, so
Great.
they'll be
Okay.
available to you.
Sorry, there. Great. Well, thanks again for having us before you. So there were a variety of questions, a variety of comments that required some feedback, a fair amount of additional information that you suggested be provided based on the hearing that we had on December 8th. So we think we've addressed those. Just to itemize generally, I think you did, number one of the big issues with regard to architecture on site was accessibility, particularly on the rear side, as well as clarifying some of the accessibility issues on the front side as well as the rear side. So you will be able to review the revised and resubmitted architectural plans, as well as the site plan, but in particular plans L101, L102. A101 and the site plan. There's now a ramp on the front side of the building, providing handicapped access on that front, as well as one on the rear side. And you will notice that there are parking spaces designated immediately adjacent to that rear side ramp, addressing some of those concerns. Again, Kaspari will fill in a lot of the details with regard to the architectural aspects of that and site stuff and or Mark Reynolds from Philly Ranger. A review of building code for basement level residential units. Again, those will be addressed by Kaspari. What you can see is provided on sheet L102. And what that provides, there are a couple of things of additional information for those areaways and how they impact potentially the residential units on the bottom floor. So there's some perspectives from inside the units going out, what's anticipated based on the height as well as the depth of the areaways as they're proposed. So you get a better feel for how the space is going to be for those units. And again, Kaspari will address some of the other code related issues or concerns architecturally that were raised. Okay, photometric plans. So there is a photometric plan that was submitted To Chris, you should have, it's not within, it should be a separate
I never saw it.
sheet,
I don't understand.
individual
That was one
sheet,
question I had. Okay, yeah.
along with all the lighting cut sheets.
Yeah.
Those are submitted
there's that.
in
It's-
paper
Did
as
you
well
go
as,
back that?
yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
There is a hard copy in this. small-
And we
I
can
didn't-
put them online. You received the reference of that.
Great.
Okay,
As well as cut sheet for all of the various lighting options. Those are full lights, fixed lights on the building, and really all the lighting options that address bylaw as well as the concerns that were raised by the board. Signage, Gaspar is going to take that. There were some changes based on, I think, some of the feedback or anticipated feedback for signage. And those would be on the architectural. So the landscaping plan at this point does show in both the site plan as well as L102 or L101, I think it is, on the architecturals. The addition of, among other things, trees and shrubs and various vegetation that is around the building, but those plans are consistent with one another. And notably addressing some of the concerns, a number of the concerns that were raised both by the board as far as compliance with section 8.10.2, but also by some of the neighbors and abutters of particularly parking, car light pollution, both as facing Maple Avenue, okay, from parking that's going to be facing back out onto Maple Avenue, as well as on our neighbor, the Purcell side, which is, I believe, the western side.
Eastern thing.
Sorry, the eastern, that's exactly right. So there's fairly dense shrubbery, plantings and vegetation that's proposed, all to be completely consistent with what the planting list for the town provides. And again, Kaspari can provide some more information relative to that, as well as potentially Mark from Billy Granger. But that was obviously critical in both aspects. In addition to that, Kaspari is going to give some additional detail about the aesthetics on the architectural features for the facade, front facade as well as the rear facade, some of the materials, potential colors, and just some additional details that were, I think, asked at our prior meeting. Garbage and dumpster area, stipulated condition, bear proof enclosure, absolutely. That really is it. Some of the additional screening requirements, but I think was duplicative of a lot of the comments with regard to the parking plan that was presented before. So in this case, we do feel strongly and we're confident that the collective information that's been presented throughout the application process, December 8th, tonight, all the submitted materials does in fact satisfy the requirements of section 8.10.2 of the bylaws to allow for grant of a special permit of this former nursing home site at 148 Maple Avenue, the 30 multifamily condominium units. I think that's all the time I need to take up at this point. From here, I'd like to pass it to the project architect, Barry Hoffman, to go down and provide down the list the improvements that I cited, maybe not in the same order, maybe in the same order, but Barry, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Nick. I should be able to preserve much of the same order in which you did. Minus, I think the last two, I think I switched around on my list. So basically in response to the last meeting that we all had, we wanted to definitely make sure that everybody's comments were addressed, and we were approaching this in a way that definitely fit the neighborhood and the town's requirements. You'll notice that most of the information that we've addressed architecturally is also, found on Kelly Granger Parsons' site plan, but also found on our L1-01 sheet. It has been split up, so we made it more clear and concise what is existing and what is new. Some of the major items there, I guess first and foremost, is accessibility. We did add a ramp on the front side. We are noting the accessible routes on the east and west sides of the building, which will, the west side is more of the resident access. We've got 2 accessible parking spaces there with that accessible route shown. We have them sized according to the town's provisions to where either one could be van. We've got I think they're by 11 feet wide with the 5-foot space in between. In the front, we have a residential.
Yes, Barry, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you because you're in a flow, but would you mind sharing on screen the L101, just so there's quite a number of people here in the audience, it'd be helpful for them to see it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if it was up or not there. So let me share my screen. Okay. Can everybody? Yes, of course. Everybody sees it okay?
We can see that. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. So as I mentioned, this is our L101 sheet, and this is the site plan here. We have the accessible ramp, which is in the front. It is directly accessed to Maple Street. So we did preserve that and met the criteria for that. We also have our accessible routes to the 2 ADA parking spaces back here. We do have 2 loading areas. These are both 11 feet wide with a 5-foot loading in between. So that should give ample space for the residents who do need to use those spots. We do have still the 50 parking spaces as well. We wanted to make sure that in reworking this, that none of those were decreased. The other thing on the list is basement units and areaways. So I'll jump around just a bit. You all have asked for more of a clarification of what this area is going to look like. And what we did was show an areaway that better illustrates what that could look like looking out of a basement unit. All of these egress windows, or even just the ones that aren't required for egress, but all of these basement windows are sized for the egress accessibility heights. They're large, open, spacious, and we have an emphasis on really seeing the vegetation that would be outside the windows. So it looks much more like a landscaped area instead of being below grade. The other area that we do have is the photometric plan. We engaged with Lux Lighting, and they helped us provide this photometric plan with dark sky compliant fixtures. We do have cut sheets, which I can show if anybody wishes. Does anybody have any questions on the photometric plan?
I have not had a chance to look at the photometric plan, but I'll do that while you're chatting, and I can ask you some questions if need be.
Okay, fantastic. And we do have cut sheets there, and I can open those up definitely if anybody does want to take a look. Everything, of course, is intended to be dark sky compliant. We wanted to make sure, one of the major aspects of design and crime prevention is ample light. So it's always a fine line of we want to make sure our building is lit, is safe for residents, for these people coming in and out. Some, with apartments, you have people working night shifts, all hours, you never know. We just want to make sure that everybody does feel welcome and safe when they come home. But all of the lighting is downlit. We have some very small accent lighting up here too as well to outline the drive that mimics, there's accent lighting there already existing, so that emulates that as well. And basically just highlight these entrance areas. As far as signage, I will jump back over here. We are showing signage a little bit more pronounced than last time because everybody was much more interested in it. Previously, we did have those large letters on top of this canopy. What we have now done is it's a metal canopy with backlit letters, so that's not shining out or up or anything like that. It just is going to, it's brushed aluminum lettering, says 148 Maple Ave. My fault, it is not backlit, but it is just brushed aluminum lettering. It's lit by the down lights on the building, and it has been downsized as well to make it more sleek and less commercial. The other signage is we had directional signage. So when you enter and exit, we have some small signage that also is warm looking with the wood and the brushed aluminum and the black accents, which mimic what's on the building. On a smaller scale, it's not quite a monument size, and it really just lets people know where you are. And on the rear, we did have 148 was shown here. We did remove that and kept it a bit more residential and kept everything else about the same, added a little more green space, but we do not have that any longer. So a lot of the large commercial lettering has been removed. I'll jump around to landscaping. As you see, there's been a little bit more vegetation that has been added, also as a way of addressing this neighborhood being more residential, more homey, more comfortable and inviting. Vegetation naturally brings things down to more of a human scale. So we wanted to make sure that we did have that in any areas that the residents readily access along within the areaways. And that's more clearly defined in the site plan on L101. You'll see the new vegetation is shown in green, and I did make it more clear what some of the existing vegetation looks like, and that's all in this gray hatch and all this gray areas, because there is a lot of great vegetation that's already on site. But as you see, it's especially used and added in these parking spaces to block the light that could be filtering into any adjoining properties. We have a lot of plantings along the property line here so that we are not having direct views from residents into balconies as much as possible. We're limiting that and just encouraging privacy. We have vegetation in the areaways, also around the ramp as well, to make that a more inviting entrance into the building. I have a note here. I looked at the tree committee's list of recommended trees. I wasn't seeing much by way of small vegetation, which we definitely wanted to do in the parking spaces to block the lower lights that are going to be coming from headlights, but I did see the list of trees. So we do have the general note for all trees are to be selected from the Great Barrington Tree Committee's list of recommended trees for planting. Any questions on that one?
Did you provide a planting schedule with numbers of trees and different species? That would be pretty typical for a landscape plan.
Okay.
I didn't see that in the materials.
No, I do not have a planting schedule. We didn't discuss that more particularly last time. We do have this here for the tree committee, but I can, I mean, with the plans that we will be submitting for building permit, I can include that unless that's also a submission after approval or something that we could do.
Yeah, just to be specific then, just to provide some specific guidance. And so for instance, on the south property line, we would want to know what type of plant would be proposed for screening planting, how many, what spacing they would be, and what size they would be at the time of planting.
Okay. Perfect. I do believe I have some notes for general sizes. New vegetation approximately 6 feet high to shield unit views into adjacent properties. So the general idea is shown, and I can definitely expand on that. Do you have, I'm just curious, do you have a list of any low-lying vegetation, or so far as Great Barrington, mostly just concerned with listing the trees? I want to make sure that I address any other lists that do live out there.
Yeah, no, we would let your professional team select the plants that we want. We typically encourage native vegetation. We would discourage any invasive species. So we don't want to see Japanese barberry or burning bushes or anything like that. Any other suggestions?
We should create a shrub committee.
I was looking for one. I hoped maybe there'd be one out there.
No, unfortunately, there's not. You don't want this committee doing your planting plan, trust me.
Well, we will definitely make sure with any of the larger trees, we don't have many. Primarily, it's more low-lying because there's so many great trees already on this property. And for our uses, it's more of the low-lying spaces for the areaways. The highest portion are right here, just to protect those views to that neighbor. But everything else is going to be lower for the headlights. So we can work to do that too, yeah. Okay. That also addresses the light pollution. We did that largely with the vegetation. We do have a note up here, new bear-proof dumpster, pad and curb with a metal panel fence enclosure. Metal panel will naturally be a better barrier than the lattice fence, or one that's a bit more climbable. Is that properly address the concerns?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, sounds good. I heard a throat cough, so I wanted to make sure. I can't see at the moment.
Sure, no, everybody okay with their?
Well, I think if you bear-proof the dumpster rather than than surrounding it, because.
That's what it says, new bear-proof dumpster.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You mean rather than like electrify the enclosure?
What has everything? The enclosure,
Uh,
the enclosure doesn't matter, that's a screen.
Yeah, and they do call it a bear-proof dumpster.
Yeah, if you close it, they're gonna break through it.
Yeah, no, the intent also, I mean, we have so much of an aesthetic of where we have a lot of black metal, so we can definitely do that as the three-way enclosure or more so, depending on. So if we're okay with just doing the dumpster, we could definitely go that route. I'm showing it open on one side anyways. Okay. Color palette. So I think that's one of the last items that I can address quickly here. So I did include more renderings in here too, so we could better show our intent. The brick is much more indicative now of what is currently on site. And so we're showing this off-white stucco that we have to balance it on each side. We have the wood accents around the roof cap as well. And we also do have the wood accents inside. So we have black edging around here just to frame the building and just bring it down to more of a grounded level. But on the undersides of each of these balconies, on the undersides of the canopy, and basically all of the areas that you approach, you will have more of a warm enclosure around you. So just to bring it more to human scale, wood was a great way of bridging between the brick that's there and great because it's already weathered, and then the newer, more modern metal in there. So the wood is a great accent point there.
So the intent is generally to leave a lot of the brick that's in place, correct?
Yes.
Right. And
Yes,
with
that is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
What is the?
Yeah.
John, we have one more question.
What are the two white things on each end that are
So this
2 stories high?
So this is the one area there were some areas of the building that we are going to clad in a white or an off-white stucco, which is going to be the same as what's in this front addition area. And we brought that just to bring a bit more balance, but also just to bring a change in materiality to sort of scale it down a little bit.
And do you have to take the windows out to do that?
We don't have to take the windows out to do that. And primarily, we just didn't have an extreme use for the windows in that area. But it's one of those things that we can have windows in there. There's no reason why we can't.
It just seems like some of the apartments are being penalized on that side.
Okay. Yeah, mostly this was driven because we found that the apartments we didn't think really needed the windows in those areas. But for the sake of daylighting and everything, we can reassess and address that as well.
I think I just want to point out, Jonathan, I think the existing windows are only on the first floor, and they are like bay style windows.
The bay windows with an awning. I have an elevation here.
Yeah.
This is what those windows look like currently.
Remember when we looked at it and they are kind of odd.
Yeah, that was our intent, was we just didn't think that they were needed or didn't really add much to the building. So we use it as an opportunity to sort of add a different materiality and scale it down a little bit.
And when you look at the floor plans, Jonathan, I mean, we're not going to spend a lot of time inside the building, but it did seem like it coincided with bathrooms and things that you wouldn't
Bedrooms and
necessarily.
Yeah.
The bedrooms,
All the bedrooms will have windows. Yes, we
all
will be
bedrooms did
needing.
have windows.
No, I know that's
I
a
looked
code
at that on
requirement.
your behalf.
That's a code requirement, but
Right.
yeah, having light on 2 sides is a great benefit.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
There's no windows there now. Anybody else have any questions about the facade treatment at either end of the building? While we're on that, okay. Thank you, Kaspari. You can continue, please.
I actually think that covers most of my List of comments that we addressed. Other than, we have the section of the areaway, which we are coordinating with civil as well. So basically just shows that cross section of if you're in a basement apartment, there's the egress areaway as well. And we will have drainage, a catch basin integrated system in there too. And this will be detailed more thoroughly for building permitting as well with our civil engineer.
And can you just refresh what the width of that areaway is and then what the railing treatment is above it?
So we do have a glass panel metal railing, so it's got more of a modern look to it. Also just to have a bit of privacy, but then just bring light into the area too. So you'll see that you can see through those. It's the same thing that's on the balconies and is uniform all around the building. The areaway width currently, I believe we've got it shown at around 4 to 5 feet wide. And we, as we size, we need to make sure it's sized properly for the existing system and rainfall calculations. And it can be adjusted a bit more as needed, but we will definitely maintain egress clearances and make sure that we do get any water that gets down here evacuated from the area.
And so the excavation of that areaway around the perimeter of the building is the reason that some of the parking is then being pulled back from the building and the driveway is being relocated slightly. Is that right? Okay.
Yes. And I can get into detail with that just a bit more. So here is where the existing driveway is and how it interacts with the building. And yes, so primarily the entrance of or the introduction of those areaways is why we do end up pulling this back. We do keep it close to the building, but we had to pull it back around this area primarily for areaways and the egress stairways from those areaways, and then here and here as well for those areaways. And you can see that reflected in this site plan. And this is what we're proposing for new. This is the areaway. Here's the new defined line of the parking area. And we have more of a safe distance away from those egress areas from the areaways and a more of a streamlined drive to the front entrance.
And the stairways out of the areaways, those are for emergency egress?
Yes, yes. Or teenagers if they're trying to escape.
Right. Okay. Anybody have any questions about the areaways?
What was the sign, what was the width of the areaway again? I misunderstood.
I believe it's about 4 to 5 feet wide because we've got the catch basin size at about 4 foot round.
I heard you say 45.
Oh.
Instead of 45.
No, not 45 feet.
Didn't look.
So you were scrambling for a scale?
Exactly. Well, he was scrambling.
Okay, good to know. Anybody else on the board? Questions about the exterior facade, the areaways? I have a question about photometrics. And I didn't want to.
Are we in the question phase now?
Well, I guess we're sort of migrating into it because Barry had indicated that she's basically done presenting new information.
You have more presentation?
Not at this time, no.
Okay,
I have just a quick question.
sure.
Katari, can you confirm that there's a door that leads from the ramp to the lobby area?
Yes. That is a great question. It might be something that we're just aren't showing on the floor plan, but it's a storefront access. So that door, it leads right in there. Absolutely, yes. So we won't make people take the ramp and not have access. So we are missing just graphically here, but it would be the same as this, where we'll have an ADA door that leads right into this ramp and leads down. Yes.
Anything else, Jeremy? You want to skip over? Come back. Jackie?
I'm fine.
No question?
No question.
Malcolm?
Photometric. It looked to me like there was no exterior lights at all on the west side of the building. Facing the, is that the Schultz property? Yeah, is that right? There's no light at all there?
So I'm sorry, it was a little fuzzy as you were saying that. You're talking about the lack of lighting on this side of the building?
There's no exterior light on that side of the building?
we would love, if you all are okay with it, we would love to put some on there. We were trying to be cognizant of the concerns with the neighboring property as it is close by. So we would love to put building lighting on there and definitely increase that area's visibility more. But we wanted to play more on the safe side and definitely be respectful of that neighbor if needed.
Is there emergency lighting that would come on by the egressway stairs on that side?
So we didn't overdo it with photometrics in there. We've played around with the idea, and we do have it in other areas where we have the stairs, where we've got some little lighting with the risers, so they shine onto the treads of the stairs. We again played more cautious this time, unsure of how far we can go. We also want to make sure we weren't shining into any of the units. But I think if we could, would be permitted to do the lighting in the areaway stairs, that I think might be really great.
Chris, do you have a full-size copy of the photometric plan, paper copy? Because I cannot zoom deep enough into this for it to be clear to show what the foot candles are.
Well, Caspar, you can zoom in
Yes.
quite a bit.
Can you
see
can
it
you
online?
clearly see it? Because I was zooming in and it would load.
Brandon, can you?
You may have to
Okay.
wait a second to
So if you go, Caspar, if you go to your lighting summary for the site, it says your light intensity varies from like 0.43 foot candles to 112. And that seems like there might be an error in that somewhere, because I don't see anything that has that much light intensity on it.
Headlights.
Let me double check. So which values is it?
In your summary table, midway down on that lower table, it says site.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so normally you wouldn't have that big of a difference between your max and your min.
Mm-hmm. I think that area might just be because our largest area is patio. So I think it just might be that cumulative total of this
So it
area.
looked to me from reading that table that your all the other rows in that table were for small discrete areas, and I was interpreting site as to be your parking lot.
Oh, sure.
But I will defer to you if you are saying otherwise.
I don't think.
So we would want the parking lot to have like a minimum foot candle of about a half a foot, and it looks like you're achieving that based on what you're zoomed in on now. But we wouldn't want to see any like spots that were as high as 112 foot candles. That's
we do not have, so that point, that site, I think is just an accumulation more of, I think maybe the grand total. I might have picked up an incorrect one, but yeah, in our largest lit areas, I think we get underneath some of these accent lightings like a 4.6. So the individual points do not get anywhere near that, if that answers your question.
It's like 4 or 5.
It's either
Yeah, it's got to be a modeling glitch.
yeah, it's a model or type of glitch. There's not
Yeah.
like 4 or 5. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, otherwise I thought it looked fine, but.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think our largest
So-
point, now that I'm looking at it, is this is in that patio area. So we've got a 6.1 just with the building
Mhm.
lighting, and we got some wall
Right.
packs, but I think that's our largest, 15.7. I think just from the site lighting and then this pole light right here. I think
Mhm.
that's one of our largest ones, but
Mhm.
definitely not in the hundreds.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I have a question.
Sure, Jackie.
I have a question, but it's because I haven't lived in Great Barrington that long. But I wonder about security and people going in through windows on the ground floor. That's just because I've lived in places where I've had people go in through the windows on
Yeah.
the ground.
Yeah,
That doesn't
it's
happen
always,
on Maple. Okay, checking.
Our main goal, and that's part of why we wanted to be very delicate with the lighting as well. I mean, there's certain factors that always come into play with architectural security. Lighting is a #1 crime deterrent. If you have a well-lit building in a well-lit area, it is one of the best ways to prevent crime. People don't like to do things in areas that have a lot of lights. It's a fine line because we definitely, life safety is our biggest drive for these areaways. We wanted to make sure that everybody can evacuate safely. And then our other areas, we just wanted to make sure that we treat with dignity and present a building that does not promote any sort of invitation to people who do want to commit a crime. We want to create a building that looks modern, well taken care of, well monitored. The nice nature of apartment buildings in general. I think a lot of times people like to have a bunch of houses, but it actually is beneficial oftentimes to do have an apartment building in a residential area. It brings differential populous groups together, and you have people working at different times of the day. So you have just more traffic in and out. Not everybody's going to work at night, but just the nature of a very well taken apartment, well cared for apartment building or condominium as this is, can naturally sort of deter crime in its way. I hope that helps answer the question.
I'll sleep better at night.
I'd like to talk a little bit about that lighting on the areaway on that west side.
Okay.
Because I think it would be beneficial to have lighting there in the areaway for safety's sake. It doesn't spill over into the next property. And but I'm not sure how can that be done.
So how is the lighting on the east side in there?
Well, that's a big parking lot. So.
No, but I mean, is the lighting just from the parking lot in, or is it? Is it on? I thought that
Is there
you were saying
building
on the tread.
We, on this side, we do not have building lighting. You'll see these W3s. These are the wall pack lighting that we have. So that is what naturally, not naturally, but that is what lights up this front and this rear entrance areas. So building mount lighting, largely here, it is the parking areas. We have in this red here, we've got some accent lighting that's going to shed some lights. We also have the larger driveway pole mounted lights, and those are a lot lighter or a lot brighter with their output than some of the smaller ones. So that naturally lights up this area. Plus we've got, quite a few of them. On this side, we have another property and some topography changes. So we do not have much lighting on this side. Our preference would be, because we didn't want to have light shining into apartments, but we could, if permitted, do a little bit of, light vegetation lighting, building mounted lighting, so that it's not facing into the apartments. And then also if we could do the riser lights here underneath the stairs, that would at least add a bit more visibility to that side.
Could you please, for everyone's benefit, then step through your cut sheets, because I'm just looking at your W3 now, and that appears to be both an up and a down light, and we would not want any up lighting at all. So I don't know if there's a version of this that is down light only, or if I'm not reading your spec here right, but it appears that it's a up and down, like a accent light that would sort of provide a little flooding on the building up and down.
The intent is to have it directed more downwards, and we can always, so the light emission, we have selected one way, so it would be just shining down. The photo is misleading. I think it has two options to where you can have it be up and down, but we would have all those directed down.
As far as would it not be, if you, on the west side, if you had lights that were below the grade mounted on the building, would that just have too much deflection back into the building?
We can play around with it. If we went with something that was, we could maybe go with something that's a bit more and even lower the light levels for a wall mounted fixture that's a bit more in the areaways. That might be helpful. I can definitely explore that option. I wanted to.
So I just wanted to point out also on the W3, if you do look at the cut sheet on the right, second column over, it does provide single or dual light emission. So they can be adjusted only down or.
Yep, and our calculations are based on the one-way light emission that's boxed in red here.
Yeah, I apologize. I've not looked these over carefully.
Oh, that's okay. It's a lot of strange information on cut sheets.
Well, we got two different packets and I focused on the more recent one, not the older one that Chris sent us. So, can you also tell us what the intent would be as far as controlling the lighting? Is it going to be on from dusk to dawn in all instances? Or is it going to be on timers, or is any of the lighting motion sensitive? But maybe we can just click through the light styles and you can tell us where they're going. And then to Malcolm's point about the west side or lighting on the egress way on the west side.
Yeah, I like Jeremy's suggestion too, you know, it's lower, then it doesn't have to spill over and it doesn't have to.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
I'm sorry, I missed that last part.
No, I had Jeremy's suggestion of the lower, which you thought was a decent idea.
Okay. So let me start with, I'll return to the photometric plan. So in the main front of the building, we have these W3s. We've got some can lighting in that canopy area, but we've got W3s, which are the ones that we just looked at. So those are the wall pack lighting that does direct downwards. Those W3s, the wall pack lighting, building mounted, are in 3 locations here and here. We do have them on 2 levels and then also in the front as well. And you can see that, actually, I'll stick with, I did a section cut through the areaways so y'all could see that a bit more clearly too. So here's the representation with those lights on 2 levels, building mounted. So that's W3s. And we also have those, so we've got those on the front side of the building. We have them on the rear side of the building, right by the entrance. And then also on this side of the building as well, facing the driveway. We have some W2s, and those are lower. So those are going to be more integrated into the walls or like the retaining wall just to light up your walking surface. So you'll see we've got the W2s. They're on those retaining walls. They shine into the ramp area. We have them on the stairways, the egress stairway, and then in the walkway that goes all the way to the entrance here.
But do they shine out as well as down?
These ones do shine out. They're very low to the ground, so they don't shine up by any means. So these W2s, they shine basically out and down. They're to illuminate the adjacent surface that's on the floor right in front of them. Do you have any other questions?
Lighting we're trying to avoid in town, where you're
Well,
looking at
that's
a wall.
generally what we want. We want it to be fully shielded.
Because when you look at the wall, I mean, I know they're low, but when you look at the wall, you're gonna see a light shining out at you.
Yeah.
I mean, I see that 2.5 feet high, but.
These are, ours are lower than 2.5 feet. So these are basically in that kick space, in that, the 6 to 10 inches to where your wheelchair or a cane would have that barrier on the side on the retaining wall of the ramp. So they're going to be pretty low to the ground, if that helps answer or clarify.
They look like they're almost interior to the walkways too.
But I thought on the front of the building.
I don't think there are any on the front of the building. It was W3 on the front of the building.
Yes, W3s on the front of the building. So these are the building mounted fixtures
These are,
right here.
these are on the back ramp.
What I meant, oh, they're only on the back ramp, they're not on that front ramp?
No. We don't have them on the front ramp currently. No, we did have an accent light in here that we added, but we did, and we have the building mounted there, but we don't have these stairs lit up because there is more lights in
So
this
Jeremy,
area.
I think to your point, the building provides the screening because it's like built into the ramp structure.
Mhm. All right, so the other ones that we've got are, so this is some of the little vegetation lighting. We wanted to keep them very low. but also just to highlight that area too and get just a little bit more light in the area without busting our values. So you'll see these are the types T and TA. And so you'll see we've got this at the front of the building. So the vegetation that's within that ramp, we have some lighting on those. We have it in some of this other front vegetation as well. And we have it on the entrance vegetation areas on the main driveway as well.
That could easily be uplighted.
I know, I don't like those at all. We have a terrible
don't?
example of that style lighting here at Town Hall.
Okay.
Blind you when you walk out the door.
And, I mean, that light wants to be an uplit, right? Because you're illuminating the vegetation from the ground. And so if you just shine it straight at the base of the vegetation, you're not achieving what you want as far as illumination. So I would not think we want that style lighting. I don't know about the rest of you, but yeah, I mean,
Check it outside.
yeah, it's terrible outside.
Okay.
So our code is not very specific about a lot of things, but it does say no uplight.
Yeah, we were hoping to angle them more horizontal, just to give a little bit more, of a presence to the vegetation. If it's not permitted, because since they are adjustable a little bit, I think we were hoping that it would be more sideways and not up.
And again, control on those, like lighting vegetation is not something one needs to do all the time.
Yeah.
What is your thought on scheduling control? Like what hours would it be illuminated?
I think typically you can do dawn to dusk to be adjusted. Charles, I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit more, as it's your building. I don't, and your maintenance on that level. I don't want to overspeak.
I was thinking around the same lines that we would do dawn to dusk, photo cell control
For all the lighting?
for all the
I
lighting.
mean, pathway lighting, I could understand. Parking lot lighting, maybe you could power down to 50% after midnight or something. But landscape lighting, I don't think it needs to be illuminated all the time. I mean, right now, I notice you guys have turned off all the lights at the property. It's very dark, which neighbors will get used to pretty quickly. Dusk to dawn, I think.
Okay, I keep hearing.
Yeah, dusk to dawn. Right, so.
I would prefer if they were on dusk to dawn, more for the benefit that the building would get, just presentation wise, like driving by.
Okay, we can talk about that.
All right.
No, not if that would be an issue for the town, more of like a personal preference.
Okay, thank you. Board members, Chris, questions?
Barry, did you speak about the pole light in the parking lot? We have a.
No, I have them. Yep. So the pole lights in the parking lot, those are P2s. So there's the pole with I believe the in view. My apologies.
The,
in view harbor.
The bylaw has a 14-foot limit.
Okay.
I think you just limit 20.
Okay.
So you want to check that.
Okay. Yeah. Let me take a. I think currently we've got it highlighted to be 10 feet, but this is the P3, P4. Let me make sure that I've got that.
At your luminary schedule, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay, P3, P4. Okay, so those P3s, we've got these at 10 feet.
No, you got
And then-
P1s and P2s at 20.
At 20?
Yeah.
Okay, we can adjust those. So 14-foot max.
You may have to add some pulleys.
Add
Anything
some.
else?
Yeah, 20
Thank you for noting that. Malcolm, any other questions for you? Jonathan, any questions? Not currently. Jackie,
Fine.
any additional questions? No. Pedro? Any questions?
Nothing. Just general questions now.
Yeah, general question?
So I had some questions just about the public outreach that you did. And how and like what you were talking about, specifically around, so I guess parking, lighting, and traffic. If that was part of the discussion.
Sure, it's based on how the previous meeting went, I thought that it would be important to hear feedback from neighbors directly. Specifically about light pollution, landscaping, signage. So those were things that we talked about.
Because I know in our last time, there were some concerns about, overflow for parking. I didn't know if that had come up and.
As far as light pollution or?
No,
No,
in terms of
adequacy of
there not being enough parking spaces
Oh,
for the site and that parking would then go out into the street or that sort of.
I mean, it's not even so much like my own thoughts as much as it is, as far as I understand it, to be permitted in the bylaw for this amount of units. That we have a surplus of parking.
Is there, along with the sale of the units, is there gonna be like a parking stipulation, like this unit comes with this one space, or? Is it not gonna be specified?
More likely than not, each unit would have at least one designated parking space, if not. Certain units having maybe two, there would definitely be open space for visitor parking, handicap spaces. But those are details that we haven't really finalized or fleshed out.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so the 30 units, the bylaw requires one per, and there are 50 presented.
No, and I get that, and I understand that's part of what we're doing too, is trying to reduce the amount of, asphalt and parking in town in a sense, but it did seem to be a big concern. And I know, people have a certain expectation when they buy, I mean, I grew up in a city and, parking was always very, very distinct when you had it was like, this is what you have for parking and this is what's available for guests and, and so I know we're in the country, but.
Right. I mean, I think the intent was, multifold. One was, the with regard to the site overall and with regard to the proposal for this project on this site, the intent is to be as delicate and careful with the site and to maintain the existing condition as much as possible while, addressing all those needs for, a new use in this location on this site. So, despite the fact that this site itself is relatively, big in acreage, the use is concentrated in this one area. And for a variety of reasons, I think there's a desire to not add parking, a lot of reasons because, or in large part because I don't know that there is a great, good area to add additional parking. I mean, most of the additional real parking space I think in the site would be up in front of the building, and that's not,
Can't do that.
nobody wants that. No, that's.
Oh, you mean on the grass?
Yeah, in the grass areas, there's no opportunity for additional lighting in the back because of the slope of the site. There's no opportunity for additional on the western side because we're right, existing buildings right up to the property line and the front out. And so our eastern butter is able to view most of that parking. And I think the additional pavement and impervious surface in this area is not a benefit. Parking, everyone who's familiar with downtown Great Barrington is familiar with a frustration for, a lack of parking at certain times of the year. This is a use, I think, that's going to be fairly consistent from a parking use perspective, and there are probably going to be not much variation in tons of people on a certain day and none on the other. I think the balance is struck fairly well. They maintained existing areas, didn't want to add to the site to create activity or opportunity to, create other structures. The balance seems to be fairly good. And I think it's the same, with the traffic impact at 30 units. Certainly the traffic is one of the things that it's easy to talk about and it's hard to, it's oftentimes subjective and it's hard to predict, which is why we have a traffic engineering report. It's what the bylaw requires. Traffic engineering, studies that are scientific and do their best to estimate intensity of use and parking and traffic. So, we've relied on those estimates and the estimates are going to be lower than the prior use at full capacity. I think the intensity at the site is reasonable and the traffic expectation of it being, minimal entries and exits on the site at the peak hours on mornings and evenings will be comparable ultimately to that what was there for the prior nursing home use. Traffic engineer estimates it's going to be less, and in fact, overall, the 30% less. But I think it's reasonable to rely on that information and data, both as the applicant, future user, and from the owners of the units, and knowing that there's not going to be a traffic situation every day or a parking situation. I think the numbers are reasonable, and it would be great to have, I guess, 1,000 spaces, but no one wants to have 1,000 spaces when 900 of them are not used. And so striking the balance is difficult. I think we acknowledge that. And again, I think the intensity of the use on the site is balanced with the reuse of this site and its compliance with the master plan, repurposing this use in this site in this neighborhood. Overall, it's a better fit in every aspect. Overall, it's a tremendous use of an existing building that is completely unused at this point and has no benefit. Yes.
My comment was more about the interaction with the abutters, because like traffic, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I don't think with how busy the street is that a project of this size is gonna have much effect. I mean, but with the parking part, I thought, not to add more parking, but just to address it in the sense that, these units are gonna be sold with X amount of spaces dedicated to that unit. And then that will leave this surplus of spaces available. And so like, to me, that takes care of the problem. Because someone buying a unit says, okay, I got that one space. And so, because I think the concern that there is like, it's a 2-bedroom apartment, you could have 2 cars there easily. And so, but if you're selling it with one space, then the person buying it knows one space.
Right. I mean, I think it's fairly common to speak generally to that issue. I've seen about 1 trillion condo documents, and most of them have an allotted, space that comes with your fee interest in your condo unit to undoubtedly address this issue. People want to know that they're going to be able to park at their house.
But I think of like a house owner, like a single family homeowner doesn't necessarily know that, right? And so
Depends on where you live, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had just one question related to parking as well.
Okay, go ahead, Malcolm.
I'm curious as to whether, you obviously exceeded what the requirements are in the bylaw, but I'm just curious from a business standpoint, is 50 parking spaces adequate for 30 units based on your experience?
I guess like it's all perspective. Like I come from like the city, like Boston area. And it's almost surprising to, have one parking space, like, let alone consider having more than that.
You do short-term rentals on it.
We don't have the same mass transit infrastructure, unfortunately,
That's
though, so
it depends
that's.
on the city, right?
Of course, this area is different. It's more rural and the expectations of a home buyer are also different. But to me, 50 spaces for 30 units sounds like plenty.
And the paved area is huge. So you could easily, without changing anything, you could actually add some in the middle if you had to.
People could squeeze.
Anything else? Matt?
No, that's good.
I have a question for Chris. Chris, in terms of 8.10, did you happen to look at the sign square footage to see if that's in compliance with the 9 square feet?
I did not. Kaspari talked about the kind of small monument signs. I'm looking at section 8.10.3 that puts a limit of more than 9 square feet. So I think just at the end of the day, the board would want to make sure that in your final submittals that you're in compliance with that.
Well, I mean, can I make the suggestion? They could also suggest as either as a primary or as the alternate, a deviation from, this section 8.10.3. It does provide
Yes, we can.
second sentence, a deviation or a waiver from strict compliance.
Okay.
But we
It's
would
up to
want to
you.
know how much we're waiving or deviating, and I don't know that at
I
the
see.
moment. So I don't know if Kaspari wants to calculate that while we're talking, and we can circle back on it. But if Nick, the intent is to ask for a waiver of that, we'd want to know how much that waiver would be so that we could fold that into our findings.
Okay.
And
So one, Kaspari mentioned there would be a sign, an entrance sign and an exit sign with the.
Yes. Yes.
with the-
Not a large, yes, and I wasn't quite sure based on the criteria, if it's the lettering itself or if it's the size of the face of the sign.
It's typically the face of the sign. So already, I think you would want a deviation because you're gonna have 2, not just 1. You have 1 at
Yeah.
each
Yeah.
driveway top, right? So
Yep.
there's
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
If it's a number off,
Chris,
then.
I
it
was
wouldn't- It wouldn't qualify.
well, yeah, so that's the thing. I was
Just a directional
interpreting the
sign.
entry and exit as more of a traffic sign.
Yeah.
That's the
Well-
intent, is more of a directional sign and not a monument sign in
The
itself, if
stuff.
that's acceptable. We only have it as large as it is to, because when you put a sign out there, we didn't want it to get eaten alive by lawn care as they usually do, or if somebody runs into something. We want a little bit of a buffer there because we'd like to have some longevity in the signage. And that's the reason for them being more sturdy as they are right now. And they are for the intent of directional. One says entrance, one says exit. They're at the driveway.
Well, I guess I just asked the applicant and Kaspari and your team, you've got 2 signs. One could be a monument sign identifying the building and also the entrance. And the other could just be the exit.
Oh, I think I was misinterpreting a rectangle on here as being an additional sign. So there's just the entrance and exit here.
Mhm. Entrance, exit.
Yeah.
Yep, they do identify. Yeah.
Just so I'm understanding better, is the issue that each sign has the numbers of the address?
Right, so on your L1-02 in the upper left corner, there's an example identifier sign that is, could be interpreted as being a lot more than just traffic control because it's got the name of the property on it. I don't know, what do you guys think?
I think they have to figure out what kind of signs they want there and come back
then come
and
back
ask
and
if
ask
they
for it.
exceed.
Yeah, okay.
Well, what would the constraint be? Because from my point of view, it doesn't really matter whether it's just an exit entrance sign versus, and meaning to say that if it poses an issue, we can just have it be an exit entrance sign, without a letter.
If it just says exit and entrance, is considered a traffic sign, and so it doesn't get into the 9 square feet limit on signage that's in the code, and then you wouldn't have to ask for any sort of waiver or deviation.
I would much rather do that. Just have it say entrance, exit.
Okay,
And
Or you might want to have your address on the entrance sign and just an exit sign on the other side.
2 traffic control signs and 1 9 square.
yeah.
Something identification.
There you
I
go.
think you
But
can. You're gonna
We're a
say
big
with the
mailbox,
bylaws,
I don't-
you have to have the actual frontage.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
This was just to better orient people.
Sure. Yeah, and to Kaspari's point, if you wanted to sit up and have a little planted area around it to keep the lawnmower from knocking it down, That's not an issue because it would just be then a traffic sign. Okay, so sign it, anything
Are
else?
we showing lighting on the sign?
On the sign?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Not currently.
Not
And they're
at all.
not, they're not backlit letters, are they?
No, they
They're
look like they're cut through, they're like laser cut through. Anything else? Mark? Anything else, John? Anything else, Jackie?
No.
Anything else, Pedro?
Nothing.
Anything else, Stern?
No, I mean, I guess just,
I just want to get to the point where we can ask the public for comments. so.
yeah, just
Is that all right?
that the lighting's not pointing up on the sign.
Yeah, we're not at the point where we're deliberating or looking at conditions or anything, but I agree with you. Okay, so if the board is done asking questions, then we'll open it up for the public to make comments. I just ask that you state your name for our records. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I just hope that there isn't too much lighting on the west end. No light bulbs at all for me.
No spillage,
Pardon?
no spillage at all.
No.
We'll keep it down, but there's
I
has to be
actually
something
don't
to
see
say.
that. There's nothing there. Like they said, it's all turned off right now. That's nice.
What I'm worried about.
Dark side.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
We're very much in favor of this. I'm Michelle Schmidt, and we're very much in favor of this project.
Great.
Thank you.
You're here.
Okay, anybody else from the public with comments on this matter? Yes, sir.
Yes, I live at David Unger, 38 Silver.
Yep.
I'm in favor of this plan. I've reviewed it myself. And I think would be terrific to take that building and what they're doing with this, it would be terrific for our community.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Going on, anyone online? I forgot to check the folks online. I'm so sorry. Raise your hand and Chris can unmute you and you can make comments.
Mark and Mike.
Yeah. Okay, seeing no more comments, so we will then decide whether or not we want to close the public hearing. Let me ask you this, do we feel like, so just in writing down notes here, so there's the signage issue, there is
Plantings.
specific landscape plan, and then just verifying the lighting is all downward facing and controlled from dusk to dawn, and that the poles are less than 14 feet.
You had talked about like intensity later on the lighting, like lowering, like you said, you mentioned 50% at midnight or whatever.
Some light styles, you can use a control that will power them down 50% in the evening, so it's not 50% of the lights, it's actually just bringing the
No, I
power down
know,
so that they're
yeah,
a little
the
dimmer
intensity of
overnight.
it. I mean, I don't know, for someone that lives in a place that's very lit up, yeah, I mean, I have very heavy curtains
Yeah,
to prevent the lights from the parts,
right,
the pull down lights from coming into my house.
right, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, our code is just a little bit not specific in that respect, so we tend to make things like that a condition.
and I wonder too, if that, I mean, if that's something to consider, because I mean, sometimes driving around town late at night, there's still things that are very lit up, it seems like, and they
That is a
appear.
whole separate issue.
No, but I mean, if this building is very bright at night, it does make a difference when, there's like 2 cars on the road driving by.
I think
versus-
the photometric plan, when you like zoom in on the foot candles, it does look like it's pretty modest overall. I think there's just a typo in that schedule that summarizes the lighting, but I guess my overarching question for you guys is, do we feel like we need to continue the public hearing to take in more information, or do we have enough information and we think we can craft some conditions?
I would go with that.
Yeah, I mean, we're.
Hang on, Nick, hang on. I know, we want to try and move it along. I just want to get the temperature of my board, please. So are we leaning towards closing the public hearing then? We feel like we've got
Well,
enough
what do
information?
you think, Brady? Do you think that we should put a condition on the landscape
Me
that
too.
you feel comfortable with?
Yeah, but what do
Yeah.
you, Chris?
Well, that's it.
And that's really it. That and the lighting in the west, I'd like to see it.
If there's a special permit granted here, it also requires site plan approval.
Mhm.
Those don't need to be concurrent. a site plan approval can occur right before building permit.
Yeah,
And it's, at that point, they may tweak this or that, or the landscaping here, they may have a planting schedule by then.
So we,
Those are details that you could, if you wanted to leave until the site plan approval. You
that's a
could.
good point. We could do that.
Yeah.
We can cover those things.
or are we doing site plan review
No,
Yeah.
we,
now as part of the special permit?
You certainly can, that is what the application in front of you is for.
Yeah, is there a
But
time limit
you-
on that then?
No, I mean, we can discuss that.
Yeah, we have experience doing that with another property in town where we did this thing. We followed up with Seville a few weeks later.
Yeah,
to
leave
complete
the
site review-
details
site
to
review process.
You
Subsequent
guys good
site
with that?
plan
that
application.
good with
Let's
everybody?
get over the big hump.
On
Yes. Yeah, then, yeah.
Move
Okay.
to close the public hearing.
So we've got a motion to close the public.
I'll
hearing.
second that.
We've got a second from, so motion made by Pedro, seconded by Jonathan. Do we have any discussion on that? Seeing none, Malcolm, Jonathan,
All right,
Pedro,
Aye.
Jeremy.
Aye.
Randy, I. Okay, so we've closed the public hearing. Then next item would be a discussion to vote, discussion and vote to deny grant or continue the special permit application.
Should we go through, what do we have to do this first
We have
one?
to look at the findings.
So you should look both at section 8.10 and 10.4. And, you know, I think probably a good thing to do would be to review these, and if you're in agreement, you can keep proceeding. If you need to reduce something to writing that you'd like to review at the next meeting, that can also be done.
Sure. In terms of 8.10, 8.10.2, special permit required for nursing home in a residential district, which may be converted to multifamily. After a public hearing, the planning board must find the following conditions. Number one, the scale of the proposal, whether in an existing or in additions or new structures, is not more detrimental to the residential neighborhood than the existing or previous nursing home use. So footprint is generally staying consistent,
Scales the same. yeah.
scale is the same. There's the addition of the foyer in the front and the areaways around the building, but I think those are for like safety purposes and egress. I think that's okay. Number two, public or private roadways and driveways which lead to the property are of adequate design, width, and condition to handle the proposed traffic. I think that is true.
State highway.
It comes out onto a state highway. It's existing pavement for the most part, the exception of the relocated driveway. Number three, the proposed traffic will not severely change the residential character of the neighborhood. So again, fronts on a state highway. Any use is going to bring traffic. So residential use will bring some traffic, but
less than
less than
the previous commercial use. Yeah.
correct. Number four, the development is or shall be served by sidewalks, bike lanes, and or transit to the extent practicable. So that is the case. It is served by sidewalks.
What downtown?
You can walk downtown, yep. Number,
So putting in sidewalks on West Avenue.
I am so happy about that. That's off topic. Number five, the Board of Health confirms that the new proposed use can be accommodated with respect to on-site water, on-site septic, or any standards of the Board of Health. That does not apply. In the case of public water or public sewer, the water district and town sewer department respectively must certify in writing that the new proposed use can be accommodated. I believe we have those in the record. That's correct. Number six, parking areas are screened from adjacent streets and properties and have additional landscaped area within the parking areas to reduce the impact of large paved areas. So I think landscaping, we've discussed what the intent is. We've got
Yeah, I think this
an intent
change
on the plan.
achieves that.
Okay. Great. Under 8.10.3, signs shall be limited to one identification sign, no more than 9 square feet in area, except for traffic, parking, or pedestrian regulation signs as required by the planning board. So we discussed that, and you're fine with complying with 8.10.3?
Yeah.
Regarding 8.10.4, lighting, all lighting units shall be located no higher than 14 feet with lights shielding to direct light downward. Lighting shall not cause glare onto abutting properties. So I think the photometric plan shows there is not light spillage except into the street, which is not problematic. Poles will need to be no more than 14 feet high and all lighting shall be downward. 8.10.5 density, the maximum number of residential units allowed on a site shall be determined by the planning board based on factors as but not limited to the impact on the neighborhood, provisions for adequate on-site amenities such as open space, recreational facilities, parking, landscaping, and buffers to surrounding residential areas. So this is 30 units in that existing building. I think reasonable size. Everybody's okay with this? Okay. Parking and loading on 8.10.6, parking and loading spaces for such uses shall be provided at the rate of at least one space per dwelling unit. And there shall be at least one loading space. That is being met. 8.10.7, the planning board may impose additional conditions. And then at 8.10.8, proposal shall be subject to site plan review.
Right.
Okay, under 10.5. Right,
I don't think we have any issues with any of those.
No,
I don't see any issues either.
we can find positive. Yeah.
We can go to 10.4.2 again. Findings for special permit.
So you're thinking we're gonna see all the specifics for like lighting, landscaping, all that, like what?
Correct.
Well, I think you've seen most of the specifics. There's just a few tweaks to.
But you were talking about planning schedules.
I think that would come with.
Plantings.
Yeah, that can be
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, definitely change in height of the pole mounted lights in the parking area. So under 10.4.
What they're.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. Under 10.4 special permits, 10.4.2, the criteria shall be granted. And let's see, we need to consider the following. Number one, social, economic, or community needs which are served by the proposal. We need housing.
We need to reuse that.
We need to
empty
reuse an
building.
empty building.
Vacant, empty buildings.
Yeah,
become
so
a
that-
problem.
That meets two. Number two, traffic flow and safety, including parking and loading. So they are meeting the requirements of parking and loading and provided a traffic study showing no significant impacts. That is met. Adequacy of utilities and other public services. We've got letters from the town. Neighborhood character and social structures, reuse of an adaptive reuse of an existing building. Providing additional social structure. Impacts on the
Also turning a residential neighborhood from commercial to residential.
well, that's true. It will increase the residential nature of the neighborhood. Impacts on the natural environment, I would say there are none. It's existing building that's going to be reused in its current footprint. Potential fiscal impacts, including impact on town services, tax base, and employment. I haven't seen any numbers, but I would assume it has a net positive impact on our.
Well, it could create jobs and also could bring people to town who would work at jobs.
Both of those things would be positive. That's true.
And
Okay.
create tax rate.
Okay, so we think there are positive things pertaining to 10.4.
Yep.
All right, so in light of that, then, and toggling back and forth here between my two screens. Are we ready to make a finding?
Yeah, do
Pertaining
you
to
want
this-
to read your conditions?
Well, I don't know if we
No.
need the conditions if they're coming.
Oh,
back.
because there's site plan review.
Yeah,
That's
do we
true.
agree with that?
Yes, just, you know, you may say, one condition is that
Site plan review.
planting schedule and lighting
Yeah,
for tweaks to be taken care of
yeah.
Okay.
through site plan review.
So then we would entertain a motion to grant the special permit for 148 Maple Avenue. With the condition that at site plan review, we receive the specific details regarding
Planting and lighting.
landscaping, planting and lighting
So moved,
Signage.
and signage. Landscaping, planting
so moved.
and lightage and signage and lighting. Okay, we've got.
Scribble down, Brandon.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, we got him. My goodness, it's gonna be a long night. Do we have a motion and a second? Do we have any discussion?
Do we talk about like maintaining landscaping figures and providing the screening for,
I would add that to the site plan. When we do get that, yeah.
but just so that they know to bring that.
Yeah, what Jeremy is referring to is that typically if we're at site plan and you're providing screening plantings, we want you to maintain those screening plantings in perpetuity. So like after the first year, if that main shrub dies, we want you to put a new shrub back in and not a little teeny 6-inch high one, like if you put in a 6-foot one to start, we want a 6-foot one. But we'll do that at site plan. Okay. All right, any further discussion? Who seconded? Malcolm. Thank you, Kim. Malcolm, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Pedro?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Randy? Aye. Okay, thank you all very much. Thank you, and thank you to the neighbors for all your input. We appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I'd like to thank the neighbors that showed up to speak in favor of the project.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you.
Good luck.
Have a safe trip back, Carl.
Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, we'll see you again. Maybe you'll be a neighbor. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Kaspari. Take care. Thank you, Parsley team.
Sorry.
Okay, so, yes, you too. Moving on. Item number 5, special permit for 70 Egremont Plain Road. Recommendation the select board on the special permit application from Berkshire Aviation Enterprises, Inc. 70 Egremont Plain Road, Great Barrington, to permit the airport in an R4 zone of 70 Egremont Plain Road in accordance with section 3.1.4 E1, 7.2, and 10.4 of the zoning bylaw. Good evening. Hang on one second, a bit of housekeeping. Are you recusing yourself?
Of course.
Okay, Mr. Hankin will be recusing himself
As in butter.
as in a butter, yes.
I should probably leave it.
Okay, that is fine. You may go out in the hall or sit in the audience.
Do we want to take a, you want to take a break?
Do we-
Pedro.
Yeah, if you don't mind holding just a second, we'll take like a 2-minute humanity break. Stretching. We'll do this 2 minutes.
She could use a gun.
Yeah. I'm wearing the mask because I was in the
Out there.
airports, in the planes,
Out in the world.
out in the world. More so
Not
than I guess
breathing much
regular.
pressure here.
Yeah, I was reading all kinds of different.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, I was definitely around a lot of people.
Where did you come in from?
I went to, I was in Hawaii.
Were you skiing?
No.
No, there is lava skiing.
Like all the snow reports, there wasn't enough snow. And the snow they had forecast wasn't big enough. And I was, I don't know, it's like 13,000 feet up. I mean, that's like serious, like 2.5 miles. Like, well, I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll just hike up and ski down, because I didn't have 2 cars, because they usually do it. Because you drive all the way to the top, and then they ski down, and then usually they hitchhike up, but if there's not a lot of snow.
Are you good to go now?
Yeah.
Okay, we got Pedro back, so we have a full complement of board members. Is there any? This is just a recommendation.
Just a
Okay,
recommendation.
all right, great. So, please, sir, will you introduce yourself? I don't know if
Sure.
we've met you before.
Richard Egan, from Cohen Kinney, Bellson and Cook. On behalf of the applicant, Berkshire Aviation Enterprises, Inc., known as Walter J. Elijah Airport and Great Barrington Airport, Egremont Plain Road in Great Barrington. As the chair stated, we've got an application pending before the select board for a special permit pursuant to section 3.1.4.E1, section 7.2, and section 10.4 of the Great Barrington zoning bylaw. With me here this evening is Rick Solon, one of the owners of the airport, Joe Solon, the operations manager, and Terry Anderson, the business manager of the airport. If you have questions for any of us, we're happy to answer these questions. There's a lawsuit pending in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Land Court, which at one hand has nothing to do with what we're here for this evening. On the other hand, has everything to do with what we're here for. Has nothing to do with it because it doesn't confront you and you're considering this application in a vacuum and then you'll make your recommendation. But it has everything to do with why we're here this evening, because as a non-conforming use, we don't need this permit that we are seeking. In fact, we think we're confident that we'll be successful on the merits of that land court complaint to which the town is a party. We've essentially voluntarily submitted ourselves to the zoning. It's our argument before the land court that we're actually exempt from zoning under chapter 9B, section 39B of the Massachusetts general laws, but that's not the, really important for our purposes here, other than to say we're essentially submitting voluntarily to zoning for purposes of seeking a reasonable resolution to this issue. Essentially, that lawsuit seeks to effectively shut down the airport by rolling it back to 1932. What we're here saying is we will submit to zoning. We will seek the permit with reasonable restrictions, which at the end of the day actually puts additional restrictions on the airport than currently exist. The airport's located in the R4 zoning district within the Wildlife Protection Overlay District. The requirements of that district are not applicable in this case. There's no alteration or enlargement of the current use. And as far as hazardous materials go, the airport is a very small quantity generator. With respect to the floodplain overlay district, there's no new activity. Nothing is happening at the airport within the floodplain overlay district, within the floodplain of the river, and there's no new activities. With that, I'm going to just stop for 1 second and draw a distinction. Forgive me for backing up for a second. Some of you were on the board or may recall that the airport came before this board in 2020. And that was for purposes of seeking a special permit from the select board, including construction of hangars. So that was conceivably an expansion of the use. This is not an expansion of the use. This is essentially looking to lock in what's happening at the airport currently with reasonable conditions. So it's not expansion, it's really existence. One way or the other, the plaintiffs in that land court suit look to shut down the airport. We're saying there's a more reasonable approach. We're going to get a permit and we're going to impose upon ourselves reasonable conditions as set forth in the application, which we can talk about. The Permits Act, the application is also consistent with the master plan for purposes for the reasons set forth in the narrative. If you'd like me to go through them, I'm happy to do so, but they're clearly spelled out, I think, in the narrative. Section 7.2 of the zoning bylaw is a provision that governs the siting of airfields, aviation fields. We think, again, we're exempt from it because chapter 90, section 39B states that any zoning bylaw that has to do with the use or operation of aircraft have to be submitted to and approved by the Aeronautics Division of the Department of Transportation. Be that as it may, even if you don't accept that, town council has correspondence in the application materials that essentially says he doesn't agree with that position, but what he says is 7.2 in the citing should follow what the chairman of the Aeronautics Division of the Department of Transportation said when he last spoke of it, which is the bylaw is currently constituted will be a de facto prohibition on aviation. And really what it should do is be expanded and interpreted to say objectionable to a degree that to a greater degree than would normally exist at an airport. We're going to submit to you that even under that standard, which we don't submit to you, but even under that standard, the use is no more objectionable than a standard airport. In fact, with the reasonable conditions that we've proactively subjected ourselves to, we would submit as it's actually less. So the 10.2, the 10.4.2 criterion, if you'd like me to just run through those briefly. The social, economic, or community needs. The airport's been operating as an aviation field since at least September of 1931. Therefore, currently enjoys a pre-existing non-conforming use. Serves Great Barrington's surrounding communities by providing community general aviation airport furtherance of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts goal of advancement of aeronautics in the Commonwealth. Provides a landing area for emergency medical transportation aircraft. The airport operates a flight school, provides educational opportunities and career advancements to the citizens of Great Barrington, Berkshire County, and beyond. The airport regularly attracts visitors to Great Barrington, which in turn has a positive economic impact on the town of Great Barrington. In addition, the airport provides employment to citizens of Great Barrington and surrounding communities. With respect to traffic flow and safety, the airport is a very low traffic generator. The airport provides adequate off-street parking, and there will be no change to traffic flow and safety parking. Adequacy of utilities, the airport does not currently, nor is there any plan to utilize public utilities. Property serviced by a private drinking water well and septic system, both of which are sufficient for the airport's needs, as well as its needs in the foreseeable future. Neighborhood characteristics. As previously stated, the airport's been operating as an aviation field since at least 1931. Therefore, much of the neighborhood has grown up around it. Furthermore, not only will it not derogate, but we feel strongly that given the reasonable conditions that we proactively suggested, that it will actually improve the neighborhood characteristic. And those conditions have to do with the hours of operation, nights and weekend operation, the types of aircraft that can fly in and out of the airport, helicopter training school, helicopter landings, things of that nature. All, again, voluntarily suggested by the owners of the airport in response to concerns that have been raised by the neighbors over the years. Finally, with respect to the potential fiscal impact, there'll be no adverse fiscal impact or other impact on town services for the reasons previously stated. There's no public water sewer. To the contrary, granting the special permit will ensure that current employees of the airport remain employed, and the fiscal benefits currently enjoyed by the town of Great Barrington, including real estate tax receipts and tourist dollars, will continue. With that, I would ask if the board has any questions. I'm happy to address them.
So just in summary, just to like boil it down to 5 words, or so it's, you're seeking the special permit so that you are regulated, you fall in that framework, and we take away this question of, is it a legal use, is it not a legal use? It would be permitted then by the special permit.
The special permit, so currently it's pre-existing non-conforming use, it predates zoning.
Right.
Under that regime, any expansion of that nonconformity requires a permit. We have said, let's put that issue to rest. Let's apply for a special permit. The granting of the special permit occurs. It's a legal use subject to reasonable conditions, including those that we proactively suggested, and any reasonable uses that the select board may see fit to add.
Okay,
So
thank
it's,
you.
again, it's the question of existence versus non-existence really is the issue here.
No, I appreciate that. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes, okay. Any questions?
Yeah, comment.
Sure. go
I
ahead.
mean, I'm in my 70s now, so I've given up the dream of flying. But I often had that dream. And when we moved to Great Barrington 15 years ago, one of the great things was the existence of an airport. It makes the town special. And I just don't understand why the airport wasn't permitted in the zoning when it was written, because it existed. But I hope this, I'm in favor of this special permit, and I hope it passes.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jackie.
What happens if the select board this time around says they don't approve a special permit.
It stays as a pre-existing.
It stays a pre-existing non-conforming.
Yes, that's an excellent question. So one of three things is going to happen here. One is the select board will grant the permit with reasonable conditions, including or in addition to conditions that we've suggested and the select board puts forth. If the select board approves it, and the conditions in our minds are not reasonable, which is hard to imagine, we would withdraw it and pursue the action in land court, where we think will be successful. So those are the three avenues. But if the select board does not grant the application, it'll continue to be a non-conforming use, and we'll pursue it. We'll pursue other avenues in the plan.
Andrew?
I got, I guess, three questions for you and for the operators. And partially to give you an opportunity to respond to some allegations that have been made about the airport. First, how do you respond to the idea that the airport doesn't contribute economically to the town, given your tax status?
I would say I'll answer it first, and then I'll turn it over to Rick and anyone else. So there's a very small portion of the airport in chapter 61 land, which because it's agricultural, it's hay, so it enjoys a reduced tax status. As a percentage of the overall acreage, it's very small. So it's a red herring in my view. I think the tax impact is indisputable, both from a real property tax point of view and for the tax dollars that come into the town of Great Barrington. I don't know if Rick or anyone else has anything.
Well, we do a lot for the town. And at the airport, we have courtesy cars and people come in and spend their hard. People fly into Great Barrington because the one factor that we have 3 or 4 cars available. And people come into Great Barrington Airport just to go into the town of Great Barrington. So.
Should do that for the Berkshire Fire.
Yeah. And I guess what I would further say is it's interesting when that argument is made that the tax receipts are de minimis is essentially what they're saying. Some folks. On the other hand, when we came before the select board proposed construction of hangars that would have increased the tax rolls, would have increased the value of the real estate. That wasn't a good use either. So it's a little bit off topic, but I think it addresses historical suggestions or points of view. Hope that at least addresses the question, if not the answer.
So how do you respond to the comments made about the contamination of the air, water, the ground, due to the leaded fuel used by, I don't know if it's the majority of airplanes there, but a large portion of them?
So I'll start, Rick, you can jump in. First of all, no one has presented any evidence. There have been studies done, there's been no evidence presented that this airport pollutes anything. Yes, leaded fuel is used, it's used in aviation. Great Barrington Airport is one of the few airports in America that actually offers unleaded aviation fuel. The airport can't control which pilots use that or don't use it. The pilots here and Rick and Joe may be able to speak further to the fact that there is a move away from leaded aviation fuel. But again, I think it's a scare tactic at its root. No one's presented any evidence. It's hard to prove a negative. And all we can point to is the fact that the airport is a good steward and is one of the airports that provides lead-free aviation. Anything that?
No, we had to redo the fuel system many years ago, and when we redid the fuel system, we set it up with the intent of the no leaded fuel. And we were the first ones in this whole area to do the no leaded fuel. The federal government has passed a law, I believe in 2025, there can be no more lead in aviation gas, and they just passed it through Congress and the Senate passed it last year. And it will be available after 2025. but the refineries, it's been told the government it's gonna take them at least a year to set the refineries up to produce the no leaded fuel. And as soon as they have no leaded fuel, Berkshire Aviation is set up to grab the first load of gas from the people that make it and start selling the no leaded fuel.
Hold on.
So the planes that use leaded fuel now, would they be able to use unleaded fuel?
Will they add lead to their fuel like they used to do with cars?
Yeah, it's for the engines, you know, for cooling purposes.
So to clarify for Jeremy's question, because I had the same question, similar to a car, you would have to add a lead additive.
It's in the fuel on delivery.
So
On the
there's,
unleaded?
No, not the.
Yeah.
oh, that's what we were.
If you're using unleaded in
Yeah,
a plane
yeah.
that takes leaded fuel,
Yeah.
you'd have to add lead to that.
We don't have, no, we don't have lead.
So there's no
No.
lead additive.
By 2025, theoretically, there should be no lead in any aviation gas.
Does that make sense to you?
So what is the government doing for the conversion of planes then? Well, I know they're saying they're not producing lead in aviation gas.
Most
but-
of them are already set up to take unleaded gas. Just
Really?
years ago, when they switched over from 8087 to 100 low lead, that just became the national standard. So to that point now, I mean, 75 to 80% of them out there across the US can easily take unleaded.
Weren't you told something very different?
No,
Oh, I was just thinking of an old sixties Beechcraft Bonanza. Can they? What kind of, aren't they dealing with leaded? Wait, you still have that plane flying.
Manufacturers have been working to produce a gas that does not affect the engines. There's one thing that you do right now, we're watching the exhaust gas temperature is one way we lean the engine and fly the engine to its most efficiency. Because the lead is still burning on the way out for cooling and lubricating the engine. And now we'll be watching the cylinder head temperatures because there'll be less pollutants coming out and the internal temperature of the engine will be more important than the exhaust gas temperature. And they've been working on this for, I think, 10 years, you know, with the government mandated a long time ago that they want to let out of gas. And the manufacturers have been working with it and they finally, the FAA finally approved last fall that the 100 no lead for the regular airplanes. So any airplane, if we have it, we'll be able to use it.
Can I ask a question related to fuel, just while we're on the fuel topic? Okay.
You're the chair.
No, I didn't want to.
But you have the floor.
You had 3 questions.
appreciate
and we only got 2. So you had mentioned you replaced your fuel storage system a couple of years ago. Can you just tell us how that's regulated and what kind of fuel storage system you have? If it's above ground tanks, underground tanks?
It's a total 20,000 gallon USD. It's a split between 12,000 and 8,000, so there's 2 compartments. It's a double walled fiberglass tank filled with brine solution around it with numerous leak detectors all around that go to an alarm system in our maintenance hangar and never had an alarm go off. I get weekly reports from everything passing. Anything else in?
And is that permitted through the state?
Mhm.
Yeah, and so you maintain a compliant state permit. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Back to
So
you.
my final question has to do with the conditions that you listed. Condition 5 states that no jet aircraft greater than 6,000 pounds ramp weight shall use the airport except in the event of an emergency. I understood that the runway is not long enough to have any jets. So can you talk a little bit about that, about what jets would potentially use the airport?
There are no jets that can come into Great Barrington right now.
So I'm curious why that's listed as
That's a response, quite frankly, to concerns that have been raised in the past about the ulterior motive of the airport is to expand. That's an attempt to show that there's no, first of all, you can't, this runway will not accommodate it, but this, the idea that if allowed to do this, drawn to its logical conclusion, it's just going to expand and eventually these type of aircraft.
Well, you understand why I find the language a little confusing, because if the intent is not to allow any jets, or that if no jets can if the airport can accommodate a jet, why even have the idea that a jet under 6,000 pounds could use it?
Right now, there are no jets that can go into Great Barrington Airport. put a stipulation in there that there'll be no, basically no jets, and there's nothing that's less than 6,000 pounds flying right now.
Okay. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy,
No, I don't have anything further.
you don't have any questions? Okay.
No.
Okay, all right, I think Pedro covered everything that I was going to go over. My only other, concern that's been raised to me specifically that I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to was with regard to the flight school. The flight school definitely provides a benefit, a real asset in the area. And I actually have a friend who I just found out, I had no idea, he learned to fly out of Connecticut, and he and his father used to fly into Great Barrington, stay for a few hours, and then fly to North Adams, and then fly all the way back down to Connecticut. So I think there's a lot of people that have used the airport. But can you respond to complaints that I've received about nuisance flight patterns over specific properties? Is that occurring to your knowledge, and is there anything you can do about it?
Past 2 to 3 years, we have significantly changed our traffic patterns. And it's kind of evolved to something that is a little bit non-standard to when you go to other airports. So after we take off, we actively try to, if we're taking off to the west, down runway 29, we actively try to turn 10-15 degrees off runway heading, because that puts us up over a wooded area and it keeps us kind of away from the houses on Route 23 and Egremont, or 71 and Egremont. And then we go pretty much all the way up to the top of the hill on Baldwin Hill. And there's a large farm up there. At that point there, we're already at our pattern altitude of 1,000 feet above ground level, which is 1,750 feet mean sea level. And at that point, we will end up turning our left on a crosswind leg, which puts us well over all of the open fields up on top of Baldwin Hill. And pretty much go over to, I forget the name of the swamp. Up on top of Baldwin Hill, there's a swamp up there. At that point, then we would turn a leg to parallel the runway and start getting ourselves set up to best enter into the pattern for landing.
Are we talking about the flight school?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not
Yeah.
anybody
We
else's
have-
flight plans.
Right, and we have posters in the office, right up on the front desk that show, I drew it out for any transient aircraft that are coming in and out to try to, better them in out here. Yeah, and signs at the end of the
So
runway.
you've actively tried to avoid areas where there's houses
Absolutely,
and things like
absolutely.
that?
Once they call, we just tell, we got a call the other day, and I told one of the instructors, hey, look, please make the pattern a little bit wider, and I did.
Are the flight instructors employees of yours, or
Yes.
they are? And so you can communicate that to them if you're getting nuisance calls or anything like
Which
that?
I am one of them. So.
You are one of the flight instructors, okay. Okay. Anything else? Chris, anything that we missed that you wanted to make sure is on? So are we inclined to make a recommendation?
Yes.
Okay. And there was one point that was raised in the initial presentation of information about 7.2 of our bylaw. On aviation fields. I can't remember, Chris, did you circulate out town council's communication to everybody, so everybody saw that? Okay.
I did. So it might be useful to the select board if the planning board, in making your recommendation, also calls attention that, the select board could benefit from speaking with town council in terms of how to interpret the applicability of section 7.2 to this application. And or the select board to consider a zoning amendment to rewrite that section 7.2 per the suggestion of the DOT Air and Noise Division, so that it would not constitute a de facto prohibition of an airport use.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that may make sense. I'm sorry, before we move further, unless any of you have any further questions, I wanted to just make sure that the public, if anybody was raising their hand, Chris had an opportunity to ask any questions, or any of the members here in the audience. So is there anyone who wanted to make comment on this matter before this board makes a recommendation? No one on the airport? That little green pin.
And so,
Okay.
so, Chris, that, the line that town council recommended, like the one of the two options, that was just, that line was just the addition to the bylaws that exists, right?
Correct.
Okay.
There was a suggestion, I think it came from DOT Aeronautics originally, was to add something to the end of section 7.2.1.1.
And my,
That would indicate that the bylaw should be applied in a way that's not an effective prohibition of this use.
Did you read the memo? I don't know, it was rather lengthy. So I think the summary version of it was just that it was council's opinion that the way 7.2 is written, it doesn't allow for the fact that the airport is existing or is not clear on that, and so it's suggesting some clarifying language.
and that Chris first came up, am I reading it right? That first came up when the MXG went before the HE and.
That's right.
Which is weird because it's totally.
Right, so it's not, in front of the board tonight to make the zoning amendment.
No.
But it might be useful to the select board if you
Yeah,
call their attention to that issue.
Yeah, but what is the resolution of the issue? That's the thing. I mean, I was actually impressed by the argument that says that, case law in the state says this is invalid, but, we're not lawyers, so I can't make that.
yeah,
I don't think we know what the resolution is, but, you could
Yeah.
encourage the select board to work with council.
right.
Yeah, well,
I agree
maybe.
with that.
I mean,
We
the
should-
argument that we got seemed to be different than a lawyer would make. Right?
The applicant's attorney
No,
maintain?
no, no, that, what we saw, right?
I'm not sure.
And Chris, from my understanding, if I remember right, it was state aviation that said that the bylaw is a de facto negation of aviation, and they suggested the language, not town council. Am I right?
I believe that's what I stated, correct.
Yeah, that's what I understand too. So it wasn't town council's recommending the language, it's state aviation.
But it was indirect, wasn't it? Because what they were talking about was the MXD. And so they weren't directly talking about the bylaw, like, right?
And I was talking specifically. about
No, but they didn't, it wasn't,
But in reference to the
it wasn't a determination
for
by,
this.
no, it wasn't because they
No.
were making a determination on the MXD, they made a side comment.
Yeah.
Sure,
Right,
right.
right.
But
Yeah,
it wasn't,
tangent,
yeah,
Which is what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
We're tangenting into zoning.
yeah.
But I like Chris's recommendation that we encourage the select board to look at it, and then maybe we take it up as an item at another time.
Was the argument that I was hearing was that because the zoning predates the aeronautics, they're requiring that all the bylaws go through them? Or that they approve
I
all those
don't fully
bylaws?
understand the
I thought-
Division of Aeronautics role, other than I assume they have some charge to, maintain aviation as a means of activity in the state.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a clear reading of that right now, Jeremy, so we should
Okay.
probably avoid those weeds for the
Okay.
moment. and
but it seemed like, from what-
Encourage
we were
the
given,
board to get
like-
advice from town council.
anyway, okay. All right.
So I do see we've got, did you still want to make?
Yeah, I might have a chance to say something.
Sure.
Lori Bashore, my husband's like, we live a half a mile from the airport on the flight path. And we're in favor of the airport and have two daughters who learn to fly at Great Barrington Airport, who grew up here, so.
Thank you.
And I'd like to say, Malcolm, you're in your seventies, so come on in, come on down.
Yeah, I've been up skiing too.
Okay, good to know. Anyone else yes, sir.
Mark Rogan, I'm actually live in Egremont, but I spend a lot of time in Great Barrington and do all my shopping and other eating and whatnot here. But I moved here 32 years ago because it was an airport. And I have an airplane there, and I ran a business out of here for a while where I used my plane to operate the business. I was a management consultant. I worked with newspapers all over the country. Anyone that was within a 500-mile radius, I flew there. And the operation over there is very, very special. It's special not only from the standpoint of what they do, but from the standpoint of a classic airport that people come to and say, wow, this is it. In addition to that, I had the privilege for a number of months of helping them with their business operations, especially when they put in their fueling systems. And I want you to know that there are safety measures against safety measures against safety measures with double tanks and all sorts of stuff. And it's all regulated by the government and by the federal aviation people and by the state aviation people. So I am very happy this airport is here. And anything I can do to sort of spread the word on that and maybe convince any doubters that this is a positive thing for the town of Great Barrington, I'm here for it.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, sir.
My name is Michael Ma. I'm a commissioner with the Pittsfield Airport Commission. I moved here about 30 years ago, and part of why I came to the Berkshires was because of the Pittsfield Airport and the Great Barrington Airport. As far as economic benefit, I'd like to say that the Mass DOT study articulated about $5.2 million in regional benefit to the local economy. But it's not just the town of Great Barrington, it's the entire county. Pittsfield is estimated to contribute about over $40 million of local regional benefit to the economy. But those numbers are kind of boring. What I find is that when you look at Great Barrington and you look at a 100-year airport where planes took off shortly after the Wright brothers took off in North Carolina, you're talking about something that is so special in American aviation history, where Walt Colasa was able to create an airfield here that represents the best of general aviation. It's kind of what makes the spiritual DNA of Great Barrington unique. And so as an international speaker, I've gone to Europe, South America, speaking on technology issues. You don't see airports like Great Barrington Airport. They don't have it. There are restrictions that don't even allow its kind of existence. So what I'd encourage this planning board to consider is that you have something that culturally and historically is probably about as unique as you'd ever find in the United States of America. And it should be protected as opposed to threatened. And that's why I think it should be allowed to exist.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm Michael Lee. I live in Great Barrington, but I'm also a flight instructor and I run an aviation program for the Berkshire School. I've done that since 2009. That program was resurrected because of historical link that the school had with the airport back in 1943. When they had two classes of students who went to school in the morning and learned to fly in the afternoon and then went off to be pilots in World War II. The last of those members died just a few years ago. So there's a historical tie in there, but also on top of that, since 2009, I've had probably an average of about 10 students a year through that program. And right now there's one who flies for Prime Air, 777's commercial pilot. There's another woman who is currently stationed in Hawaii flying resupply helicopters with the Navy and the fleet in Hawaii. There's other students who've also gone to the military as pilots and commercial aviation. Now, a lot of kids have got their start there. Some of them have been local. There have been 2 or 3 local kids who have learned to fly through that program. And it's just a great thing for the community, and it also gives me a job, so I'm really happy with that.
It's good for the community too.
Anyone else? Yes.
As no butter.
Yes, sir. Can you please state your name for the record?
Jonathan Hankin, 43 West Glen Road. I'm here tonight, at least in part, because I was able to avail myself of the medevac that kept me alive. And I just wanted to stress how important. It wasn't out of Great Barrington Airport, because unfortunately I wasn't at Fairview, but it's very important. as a resource, and I think you cannot overstress them.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'd like to add to that.
Please, Michael.
As a young man, when my father had a coronary, a medevac was not able to get to him. And I had to do the CPR while we waited a long time. Residents of Great Barrington don't have to worry about that. You have an ability to have medevac, emergency life flight helicopters serve this immediate community, and you won't have to worry about what my family went through.
Thank you. All right, anything else? Anyone online? I see one hand raised. Hang on 1 minute and Chris will unmute you. Mr. Schlesinger?
Thank you. If I, can you hear me?
Can hear you, yes.
Oh,
sir.
good. I don't know about this technology. I unfortunately don't have enough sense to be a resident of Great Barrington, but that's a mistake I could remedy quickly. But I think that because of the nature of this discussion, I think that may give me some special standing, because the reason I come to Great Barrington from Connecticut, just across the border, is because of the airport. And I think a lot of people do that because of the airport. There is an app that we pilots use to help us navigate to different airports. It's called ForeFlight. And one of the features of that is a comment section that pilots can enter their thoughts of, about different airports. And let me just read you what they say about Great Barrington Airport, because I think it's relevant here. Somebody called Matthew K., I don't know who he is, wrote about 11 months ago, "This is a must-stop location if you are in New England. This is by far the best small airport in the Northeast." And what that means is pilots read that, and we're an odd bunch of people, and on weekends we look for things to do, and we look for places to go, and we read these comments and think, that looks like a fun place to go. And when they come here, there's a thing that one of your board members must know called the $100 hamburger, where people fly to these airports that cost a ridiculous amount of money to go to lunch. And so if Great Barrington Airport is known on these apps as one of the best places in the Northeast, people are going to come here, and people do come here to Great Barrington, and they get in one of Rick Solin's free cars and drive downtown and have lunch and contribute to the economy. So there's no question that any town would be happy to have an asset like the Great Barrington Airport. And so I would just urge, admittedly, reluctantly, as an outsider, again, this can be cured at some point in the future, but as an outsider, I would just ask that you show some love to the airport and some love to yourselves, because it's also a matter of self-interest for you all, and grant the special permit or the recommendation for the special permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online who has comments to make? Can you just raise your hand? Give it one more ask. Okay. Seeing no more hands raised, are we inclined to send a positive recommendation to the select board with a comment that they review or work with town council as it pertains to the consideration or the recommendation that was made in town council's letter regarding section 7.2.11?
I'll move that into a motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah, a second.
Malcolm will second. Do we have any further discussion on it?
I'm wondering, I realize there's no current aircraft that are under 6,000 pounds in jet, but would you consider changing that to none except in the event of an emergency?
Yes.
You can certainly ask that. I don't know that we're gonna send recommendations for conditions. I suppose we could, but I'm not inclined to necessarily do that. I was more inclined to have them consider
I mean, I know that's been a concern. I mean, that this airport's gonna turn into one where jets are landing, so.
It's going to.
I mean, I don't know if anybody has a concern about emergencies. because-
Yeah,
No, there'll be no jet service. There's, there are small jets in the making. They're the same size as ours. They're more efficient on fuel. They're quieter than the piston aircraft. But right now, there's nothing less than 6,000 pounds out there to be able to fly in and out of, I think the jets.
They can fly in and
Yeah,
out.
but I'm just-
Are you talking about a stipulation of an emergency where if we have hurricane or tornado and federal?
No, I was just, it's one of their things that they're, for conditions on the special permit.
There are small jets that could get into Great Barrington, but but there's nothing that is under 6,000 pounds. Most of them are 6,050 pounds, 7,000 and up. And I just said, okay, we'll just limit it to there's no airplanes that can get in there right now. They're 6,000 pounds. So I'm limiting
I
it.
wouldn't rule it out for the future either.
I wouldn't either,
Well, no, but I mean, it's a,
especially
Well, I
if
would
it's
like to select
quiet
the-
and,
well, I
yeah.
know, but but
I'm not
wouldn't that be a
inclined to.
consideration for a future, like a modification to the special permit then?
Well, since we're not the special permit granting authority, I don't feel strongly about it, so I wouldn't I don't feel we should recommend that to the select board. And I think if the select board feels that, they're getting a lot of heat about jets, then they can recommend that.
Well, I mean, because that's what, I mean, we've heard that comment. I mean, we're hearing now that,
I told the town, in the letter that I'm willing to do anything to get it from whatever it takes.
I think one of the things that's going on, and you can look at the electrification of automobiles. Anything that comes out in the future is going to be better than what we have right now. Any small aircraft that are there are going to be less offensive, they're going to be less noisy, they're going to be better for the environment. And under those circumstances, I don't know that you want to put a kibosh on any new technology.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, all right, so I'm not inclined, as you are not inclined, to make a modification to
Yeah, I mean, if
the
you're.
recommendation that Pedro made.
And if I voted, I'm not inclined either.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I'm only saying that because once the special permit's in place,
this
it
is
doesn't
what we
mean
have
that
to
it can't be modified, right? Because they have much stronger standing than, and so.
I
And
sort
then,
of,
and if the technology is better, I assume that the process of, modifying the special permit would be very easy
yeah,
in
sometimes
terms of the resistance.
it can be harder to go back and modify, right?
Well, I mean, for people that want to see the airport go away, I agree with you, but I don't know if that's really the tone, like, of the town in
Jimmy?
general.
I'd let the select board make that decision.
I mean, but they are gonna make that decision,
Well, then let
so,
them do that.
but since we're sending comments.
I
I
encourage you to go to their public hearing.
know, but Monday nights I work.
I don't know what to do. All right, so we have a motion and a second on a positive recommendation with encouragement to visit town council's letter. Regarding 7.2, do we have any further discussion on it? Hearing none, we'll vote. Malcolm? Pedro? Jeremy?
Aye.
Randy? Aye. Okay, positive recommendation is being sent. Good luck.
Thank you for your time.
Yep, thank you. We appreciate all the information. and
Thanks
educated.
for everybody
Thank
should
you.
have been positively about something.
Green pins.
I mean, it's like,
Yes.
what happened? Did it help you then?
Oh, yeah.
Now our meeting's just starting.
I know.
I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, thank you very much.
The letter that's.
But I'm thinking the airport. And the story that we just got is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The list that's in there with the town, everything is making some pretty good deals. negotiating pretty good cuts on my side of business to make sure it's.
There was a very elderly gentleman that used to come with you guys and he used to speak about teaching young people to fly and maybe he was a World War II pilot. I don't know. Am I like misremembering that?
Oh, Bill Wiley, yeah, he just passed away.
Yeah, he was really lovely to listen to.
I started here at Great Barrington and I was in for 37 years.
Yeah,
And right now, we get off the list of people.
yeah.
Currently 5.
Right.
When you're getting back to the yellow plane. You are really?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah. Wait, we need you to play? Thank you. So we should get on it.
Yeah, we're still meeting.
That was.
It was like 16,000 more things to do. Yes.
No, I don't think so.
All right. Item number 6. Look at you, and then there was one. What is it? The G stands alone.
Look at all the people that are still there. All the people still on.
People online, so we'll move on to our next item. So item number 6 is Barrington Brook subdivision request from the developers to release additional certificates of occupancy. 10 are being held as covenants for phase 2, and I think the request was for 5 to be released. Chris, is that correct? Or was it 4?
I believe it was for 4 certificates of occupancy.
They had 1 and they needed 4 more because they had 5 houses under construction. Is that?
There are 4 houses that are under construction.
Okay.
There's a 5th house that was just built, that was sold.
The request is to release 4
Okay.
for certificates of occupancy.
And so this came up at the last meeting. We didn't have this action on the agenda, so we moved this part of the action to this agenda so that we could notice it in our agenda.
The applicant's engineer is on if you
Oh.
need.
Oh, I
a
didn't think
representative
anything
from
was
SK.
gonna be here.
Matt, sir?
If you need, you know,
I don't
the
know.
decision the board issued in May of 21, essentially said, you know, no COs until an engineer states that, you know, it's an appropriate time to do so.
Mhm.
By way of this request, you have that, you have the signature of an engineer
Mhm.
taking the request and laying out the case, so.
I
But
feel
now
like
it's
the
here to
case
do.
was made by Mr. Scalise at the last meeting, and we just didn't have the, we didn't have the, I don't know if he can tell us that he was asking for it simultaneously or what the order was, but
We
I-
could have voted for
Well,
it because it's related, but anyway.
anyway, okay.
Well, here we have some cost estimates.
So, yeah, and I am not concerned about the costs, the value of the remaining work to be done as it relates to the value of the.
But isn't
remaining
that what we're
6 COs.
deliberating is the value of the properties versus the value of the work that we might be on the hook for?
Right, correct.
So I see the estimates for the work. What is the estimated value of the properties?
It was in there.
Is it?
Well, there was assessed value of the lots.
Which I don't remember what that was.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know.
It's like 175 at a lot or something. Yeah.
So we're talking like almost $1 million worth of value and
Well,
I know.
but to the town, it's not worth anything. My concern is that this C of Os is leverage. And if you give away all the C of Os, he's got 4 houses built, and if he gets those C of Os, he may walk away tomorrow and not do another damn thing. That happens all the time in developments. And so, I think, give them 2, and then you come back in the spring when they've done more work, and so give them another 2.
What is the amount of work that they could finish before,
The snow is gone,
before all of the construction is done?
before the snow is gone.
Well, I'm wondering more before the construction on the rest of the,
If it happens.
okay.
Yeah, you know, I know we've had a lot of problems with development, but I'm not sure. What, I mean, you know, I'm a little gun shy in terms of previous developer, but I think these people have been working pretty much in good faith. And I'd be inclined to give them the COAs for these houses, which they told us in advance they were building, and you know, they've done everything they can do with seasonal allows, so I don't see anything for that, so.
They haven't done everything they could do because they haven't finished the infrastructure.
They have, I would say
landscaping
that
and paving,
they have finished the bulk of the infrastructure.
They've done a lot of it, they haven't done all of it.
They have more to do, but I think we also have the feedback from the neighbors who are also eager to see houses occupied, and the sale of the houses provides the capital to continue the project.
If you give them 2 now, and 2 in the spring, after they've done more work.
But what if all 4 are sold, which I thought that's.
Wait, like how far are they from completion? Are they like ready to?
I haven't been back there for. I was back
They
there-
still have the seals on the windows, the labels on the windows, but they could be fine. I don't know. I didn't go in any, they were still working on a couple of them.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I remember what you said about the public being here
Yeah,
and the representatives, they were all very keen on moving forward. So it was not just the presenter, it was people who were actually living there.
Right.
So I was sensitive to that.
right.
So the impact on the project not being completed. Like, let's say we give them the 4 and then they walk away. So with what is left to be completed? Like, what is that impact? I mean, I realize if the town were to finish it, I realize what the impact is, but if the town were not to finish it. What would the impact be to, primarily it's the people that live there?
The impact would be primarily to the residents. Yes, I think that's
The paving and the
probably
landscape.
And
accurate.
also, if the town had to do any of this work, it would cost
It would-
twice as much.
Twice as much because of their wage, yeah.
Although I suspect this would devolve into a series of lawsuits.
I'm not gonna go there.
Great.
Let's see, so Matt is dying to talk and straighten us out, so. Hi, Matt, go
Hi,
ahead,
Can you
please.
hear me?
Yes, we can.
Just want to clarify a few things. Some of it I think is correct. There's 4 houses currently under construction. I'm told 2 of them are about 80% complete. The other 2, not as far along. The infrastructure that is complete, all sewer and water and drain is complete, I've been told. All paving has been complete. The outstanding items would be some landscaping and lighting. I don't know what percentage or exactly where. I suspect it's in the area of the houses under construction where the landscaping and lighting is not complete. I think you may be aware of that. I was just trying to clarify a few potential questions.
Thank you for clarifying the house situation.
Further for clarification, so the board will still hold 5 building permits that have not been allowed to issue.
Permits or
Building
CFOs?
permits.
Building permit.
There's still 5 building permits not allowed to issue.
Building permit?
Mhm.
Correct.
It actually may be 6, just another point of clarity. I think it's 6, but
There's 6 lots that are not developed yet, so would it
Oh,
be
it might
6?
be 6, you might be right.
Yeah.
So
I think it's 6.
At least 5.
See, what I don't understand is this request. The request proposes the issuance of certificate of occupancy for the 5 houses currently under construction. This requires the issuance of 4 additional certificates of occupancy that have been previously approved.
Right, because 1 certificate from our last round of approvals is still available
Make the 5.
to get to 5. That's 4 plus 1. They have 1
They
that
have
they can
1.
use, and they have 4 that they're asking.
But John, you think they already used that one, right? You say it was sold?
But, hold on a second, In the end, though, we're not the ones who actually, we just release them. It's up to the building inspector to actually
Grant.
grant it.
Correct. Last year, when in the spring of 2021, I said last year, it was almost 2 years ago. The board at the time was holding 10 lots that couldn't even be built. And the board at that time said, okay, you can build on 5 of those 10. But no building permits can, no C of Os can issue on anything else. So few of those are under construction, now they're seeking COs on those.
On the ones that are either under construction or finished. Yet there's still 6 more that we hold.
I don't think there are any that are finished. The only one that's
So
finished
80%
has been sold.
2 at 80%.
So they're at about 80%, whatever, a couple are 80%,
Yeah.
but there's still 6 lots
I think it's
yet
five.
to be developed.
It might be 6, I think.
Well, it
so, I
says
mean,
6
The
here.
project has 6 lots currently
Okay,
under
they're
development,
moved.
1A, 1B, which we just approved,
Yeah.
2, 5, 14, and 15,
Anyway,
right?
there's still more that we hold. So if we release the 5, it's just for those 5. And so your concern is that they won't develop the undeveloped ones?
They, if they develop them, fine, but if they don't finish the infrastructure, that's my concern.
But they still have to come back to us for those additional 5 COs.
Yeah,
If
but
he
hold on.
does them,
If
if
he
he gets, if he gets these 5 C of those
So,
and he sells them and he says, screw it, and walks away,
He doesn't have to develop those 6 lots. It's his point.
yeah.
right, I understand what the
Okay.
point is.
The
The question is, do we think that that's significant risk? And Jeremy's point was, who is harmed by it?
Well, mostly,
Residents are harmed by it, which I don't want to see, but we've gotten feedback from the residents and they want to see this project
because
continue.
it sounds like landscape and lighting is what we're talking about, right?
And they aren't very keen on the lighting. They are keen on the landscaping.
Well, no, but there was also open space and delineation of open space and creating new open space and vegetating it, that sort of thing.
And I do want to see that
Yeah.
done.
There's a lot.
I don't think that personally that granting 4 additional COs puts us at really tremendous risk.
And let me talk about the numbers. I misstated the numbers earlier because the 480,000 is what they spent. 540 was what was estimated for the total work in today's dollars. So there's really they're estimating about $60,000 worth left, I think.
For landscape and lighting, yeah, that
Yes,
makes
That's
sense.
2-year-old,
Which would be about
that's
right.
2-year-old numbers.
But we're talking
Well,
about
they-
plant materials. We're not talking about expensive.
Excuse me, everything has gone up.
I agree, everything's gone up. I see it all the time, but
Well, they've
we're
gone
not
up from
talking
6
about
to 100.
thousands of feet of pipe or, concrete structures or anything like that. Plant material, yes, has gone up, but I don't think it's that significant.
Have they given any indication why they haven't finished the infrastructure?
The landscaping and lighting, and most of the heavy infrastructure is done,
Yeah.
Yeah.
except the landscaping and lighting,
Right.
which we heard about last time.
And I think landscaping was because of seasonal. The lighting is because they couldn't get agreement on it.
Well, and the landscaping, I mean, Matt, do you want to comment on normal order of operation for construction and where landscaping falls in that order?
Sure. I mean, landscaping is typically one of the final items that happens because you want to get all the rough equipment out of the way. I don't know the history of the lighting. It sounds like you folks might know more than me. I wasn't at the last meeting, so I don't know those details. It sounds like there's some.
There's
But-
2, not pedestrian side, but like 10-foot mounting height, lights at the end of the cul-de-sac that are being provided.
And is the conduit in to feed those? I don't know.
But I imagine if they already paved, they put the conduit in.
but
I
so
wouldn't- I
is
wouldn't
it,
bet on
it's the landscaping in there, but it's also the landscaping of that loop that
The cul-de-sac.
cul-de-sac
In the
that
cul-de-sac,
precedes the.
plus the landscaping around the stormwater basin, plus the landscaping that they worked out with Mr. Brown to mitigate his concern about
Plus the
seeing
pool-
lot A and
pool
B,
house
plus the pool house. Yeah, I mean, they have a fair amount of landscaping to do, that's true.
But the cul-de-sac is the bottom, right?
It's the end of the road where there's
Well,
a
what
little,
about at that whole loop? They had talked about that, and right now it's got some material, right?
I
so-
don't know what you're talking
I have the
about.
map.
So there's the sort of like tuning fork, brushwood lane, tuning fork, like long skinny, the pool's on one side.
Yeah, that whole thing.
That
with
is
the
all
center.
paved, but the center of that is wooded. It
No,
doesn't
but
have
I thought there was a
landscaping.
bunch, I thought they addressed that in the last meeting, because there's a bunch of material in there too, that looks like they put stuff in there as they were.
No, that's on the south side where lot A and B are gonna be, that lot one is gonna be split into A and B. There are giant material piles there, and there's a stormwater basin there.
But I've driven around it, because you can go by the pool, but you can also drive around the other way to get out, and that whole,
construction traffic.
that whole center
It's all
section.
paved now.
I know, but it says for construction traffic.
Yeah.
So that center section is gonna stay like that?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
It's just wooded.
So,
Did the DPW supervise the paving in any way or check the paving, see if it meets their standards?
No, I believe we were relying on the engineer's certificate for that.
Okay, and we have that.
I don't believe we have it specified.
Is there an appetite on the board to release 3?
I mean, what is the
I released 4.
temperature?
Let's just move on.
I mean, we're holding them because.
Well, they probably have one house that's 50% done. I can get the last CO.
Right, but I mean, we're holding these, in escrow, right? I mean, basically, what's the term? Covenant, we have covenants on these 5 for a purpose. Okay, to use as a backup in case they don't finish the project. Well,
But to
I mean,
Jonathan's,
if that's not gonna be effective, if we're not gonna use it that way, then we
Yeah.
should find some other way to try to ensure it, but this is, I mean, in good faith, this is what they entered into, I think we should honor it.
and I agree with you, good
Alright.
faith, but to Jonathan's point, like what we hold now is these COs for houses that are in the process of being completed, right? Like, so those ones, it seemingly they're gonna complete because they wanna get paid for this.
That's leverage.
And so that's real leverage, whereas if they don't do anything with the other 5 or 6 lots, that's not really leverage.
But then we should find some other means of ensuring completion besides.
Which is
holding
the
those in
whole-
escrow.
Hold one final CO. There's
That's.
Except for, I think, I agree with Malcolm's very rational approach on it, is that we made a deal with the developer
Yeah.
initially, and now we're reneging on it.
Yeah, and that's,
And
that's,
I
They
don't,
say-
Reneging it all.
We're not
He
reneging.
hasn't finished the infrastructure. That was the deal.
and he doesn't have all of the lots released, that is the deal.
We were releasing a lot.
But you're
as
saying
we
we're
finished the
reneging, and I don't think we are.
You're like moving the goalposts.
They are too.
It's
Well-
a constant back and forth. We've made so much more progress with David Margulies than we did with
Yeah.
Mr. Ward, and I don't know
It's
why we
still in
would,
his pocket.
I don't doubt it, but I'm not gonna get into that.
and I thought like what we were getting from the residents was all very much like in favor.
But how would holding back one CO harm them?
Well, they can't collect money on it until they, until the COs can.
They can collect money if if somebody's willing to give them the money. Us holding the CO doesn't prevent somebody from saying, hey, hold that house for me, here's $10,000 or whatever.
Well, but I mean, then there's another $500,000 they're not getting until we release the CO.
But they can also
But-
say that we're gonna get it as soon as we do this,
That's
and
right.
this. And
They have to
no, I
install
think the
light.
person,
And plant some plants.
yeah,
I just don't feel this is a realistic discussion, because I mean, they didn't come here at the last meeting and ask for another building site because they didn't intend to build anymore. I mean, they want to build more. They actually asked us for another site so they could build more.
Yeah.
So I mean, if we grant these 4.
Did they
I
really
don't
ask
think
us
there's-
for another site or they just moved another?
No, they wanted it because they built that one on a
Right.
double site. Then they asked us to split
Right.
lot 1 into 1A, 1B and move
Again,
the lines.
I kind of, I know lots of developers and some of them are great, some of them are not so great. I personally haven't worked with Mr. Margulis and these guys. They have been performing really well, I think. But in the end, there's still some stuff that this board is responsible for making sure that it happens. And that whether it's just 2 lights and a bunch of plantings, I think we're still over.
Okay, if we can move this on by releasing 3, do we have an appetite for that? Because we're like going in a circle and we're not making any progress.
Jonathan, where are you with,
He's gonna vote no.
regardless?
Well, I was going to suggest 2.
I'm not negotiating. 3, do we have a motion to release to 3?
I would.
So moved.
I'd vote for that.
Thank you. Do
I'll
we have a
second it.
second? Jeremy seconding. Do we have any further discussion on it? Hearing none. Malcolm?
I'm gonna vote aye, but I think it should be 4, but I'll vote aye for 3.
That's fine. Jonathan?
I'm well done for that.
Oh.
Oh my God.
Thanks. Peter? Jeremy?
Aye.
Randy, aye. Okay, thank you. Moving
Thank
on
you.
to the next item. Thank you, Matt.
Unanimous.
Jeez,
You still with us, Kim?
Feel like I just took a wild ride on the Ferris wheel.
You second, please,
Item number 7, bylaw amendments for May 2023 annual town meeting. Chris, we're bumping up against our scheduled deadline, aren't we?
No, you're not too badly. I think you've got another meeting or two to work on these. The public hearings should be completed by March 23rd. Let's just look at the calendar real quick. Let's see. So. You know, if you would shoot to have the public hearing on the 9th on our birthday.
Is that your birthday?
No, it's public hearing day.
Maybe we should have a meeting like on the 2nd.
So let's say the 9th, so that means you would advertise. I gotta build in 2 weeks of advertising for mid-February. And let's just see when the select board meets on. The 13th of February, so I think that you would have to finalize your work. By the end of this coming meeting, February 9th.
Okay.
You'd have to have sort of at least drafts that are ready to go out. To the select board, to the transmitting select board, and then to have a public hearing. I mean, at the public hearing, you can make more amendments.
Yeah,
But something that you're comfortable.
small amendments, so not contextual or.
No, I mean, you have some good
Some
latitude even
okay.
during a public hearing. So you can work on it tonight, you can work on it more on the 9th of February. Also on the 9th of February, we're expecting to have a preliminary land development plan for the Habitat for Humanity site.
Okay,
On
great.
North Plain Road, so that will probably take a good amount of your meeting.
And since you're not gonna be here, we have to be on our best behavior too, right?
So I am proposing then that we look at tonight reviewing and recommending to the select board or referring to the transmitting to select board items B 1, 2, 3, and 4, maybe 5. And then I'd like to just have a brief discussion on 6 and 7 pertaining to Stockbridge Road. So we had spent a fair amount of time with item B1 residential terminology, replacing family with unit. That seems fairly non-controversial. Does anybody have any further concerns on that matter?
I have a lot of.
Do you have tiny like edits?
Well,
or like substantive edits?
Are you wondering if the tiny edits could take place outside of the meeting?
Correct, because we're going on 3 hours.
No.
But if there's substantive things, please do raise those. I thought our objective in this item was to try and like neutralize families and be a little bit more inclusive in the. Sorry, that came out wrong. To neutralize the terminology and be more inclusive. Yes, I'm sure I'll be misquoted. Thank you, Bill.
No, you'll be quite unfortunately.
Well, do you want me to just go through it or do you want me to?
Yeah, just.
Go for it.
Okay. The first one under accessory dwelling unit. On the first line is subordinate dwelling unit on the same lot as a primary single residential unit. There's a unit if it's not defined. I don't know. Under dwelling, multi-unit should have a hyphen between multi and unit.
You start again.
Sorry.
Are you trying to edit these slides, Chris? Is that your goal?
Well, I'm concerned.
Sure.
Yeah, but we don't want to lose any of the comments.
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Do you get multi-unit?
Start again.
And so John, specifically, you're using residential differently than dwelling?
Well, it's just,
I'm just trying to make it clear. It says a single unit doesn't mean anything.
well, a single unit or 2-unit residential use. So I think it does apply to residential use, but
I need to know, please, John.
Yeah,
can you
I'm
start
trying to
again,
figure out exactly what line you're in.
The first line, same lot as a accessory dwelling unit,
Thank
same lot as a primary single residential unit.
Okay, thanks.
The next one is under dwelling, put a hyphen between multi and unit. This one is not a change under dwelling, single unit. But it says designed for and occupied by one family only. And then we're striking the definition of family, so I'm not sure what that means or why.
I think that's substantive, right? So we could say detached residential dwelling unit other than a mobile home. Does it need to go on more than that?
I don't think so. And
it does.
the same for the
It does
dwelling,
not.
the same for the dwelling, 2-unit. Then
I think it does need.
But you know why
it
that's
needs to be
there, right?
specific, yeah. Well, yeah.
how do you're taking out a definition for family,
Yeah.
and then you want to put it in.
That's a good
No,
point.
no, no,
It's
I mean,
contradictory.
I mean, there's gotta be some clause there that says it's for one family unit or one.
All right, so we'll come back to that.
As opposed to a multi, which is the.
All right.
Yes.
We'll decide on that next meeting.
I'll
give you.
We can see.
The next one under dwelling unit. This didn't make any sense to me. A structure containing under one roof and within exterior abutting walls. One or more rooms, including a room or rooms for living, sleeping, cooking, and sanitation. Why is that any better than what was there? You know, what are within exterior abutting walls? What the hell does that mean? And under one roof? What
In a building.
what if you have multiple roofs on your building?
John, there's a lot of anger in your tone, man.
I know, I can
I
tell.
think you might have
wanted me to be-
referred to existence.
Substantive. I wanted him to be substantive.
Yeah, I'm trying to be. So that to me doesn't make any sense.
All right, so more work there.
And then under live work units, limited to one household per unit, but we don't define household.
Good.
And
You know, we get a lot of confusion
then you took,
if you take away family,
and you took family out, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's my good.
because family defines a
Okay,
unit.
so
I mean, you can replace house dwelling with house.
What is-
Replace
Does building code
household with
offer
home.
us any guidance, Pedro?
Dwelling, they say dwelling, dwelling is like,
And how is dwelling defined?
it's like a place where people live. It's like one unit of dwelling.
I mean, what if two unrelated people live, is that multi-family?
They don't,
Or,
it doesn't distinguish between related people.
yeah, I know, but how do you define
Does
it?
it-
What's the difference between a house with two unrelated people living in it being single?
Do we care who the people are?
It's, no,
No,
that's,
we-
but
House.
Malcolm, that's the point, is that if two unrelated people live in one house, they live in one dwelling. So that's, I think, the point of why.
The dwelling being, the thing with a single roof and
Yeah.
4 contiguous walls.
Exterior,
Oh, yeah.
interior walls.
Can we go on to the next, the
Yeah,
next one, Article 2? In your introduction, Chris, in the last line. But for which currently there are only ambiguous regulations, not is.
I'd like to thank you, Jonathan.
Under 6.4.2 deposit materials. So Brandy, explain this to me, because I assume this is coming from you.
Is this confusing?
So it.
because it has to do with deposited materials.
Yeah. So what happens if? What happens if you, is this referring to? What if there's a bare lot? I mean. Look at Barrington Brook, those lots are bare.
Mhm,
So does this mean you have to cover them?
mhm.
So you don't get erosion
Yes.
while they're just sitting around.
Yeah, in many places, if you have bare earth for more than 7 days, you are to seed it with something so that something cheap, there's very cheap seed, just so that the soil stays on the lot.
But you've got backhoes going back. and forth.
If it's not active, so in the case of Barrington Brook lots that were cleared,
Yeah.
the ones that are not actively being constructed should have been seeded with something to stabilize.
And so if I bring in a load of topsoil or a load of sand or whatever, that's gotta be covered.
If it's gonna be, I mean, we could put a time on it, but usually it's 7 to 14 days is what I've seen in practice.
Really? I don't know, I mean, it seems a
Put
little over the
temporary
top.
vegetative cover on it, standard best management practice.
And do it.
And then under 6.4.45. Talking about existing grade. By no more than 6 feet. Typically departing from existing grade by no more than 6 feet. That would mean Barrington Brook could not have been built. Because they have walkout basements on every single one. And when I asked Matt about that, if the land didn't configure, he said, we would make it configure. So is that really what we want to do? I don't know.
I have a comment in general about this site. This is the design standards that Pedro sent us, right? On that one, I would suggest that we put any departure from existing grade by more than 6 feet requires site plan review approval by the planning board.
Yeah, and I think this came up in discussion about was it the ADU that was being had, the second unit, what was the one that was over on Brookside Drive? Brush Hill Road, this is Brush Hill when you go up the road.
Here,
Right, it was that small, and we were trying to find out how could we strike the right balance between not overburdening someone who wants to build an ADU or a second dwelling unit, but in an instance where like our site plan review is like, do you realize you have to put in retaining walls and extensive foundations because you're orienting the house perpendicular to the contours, or building in a lot of clearing and cut and fill. So we were trying to find that, like, where's the right line where we would trigger a site plan review, and where could they be at a lower threshold and not trigger site plan?
well, if we get back up just a second on this, I really have a problem, of course. And I've expressed this multiple times about doing away with site plan review without design standards. And I think what Pedro has presented here is very good. I think there's still some subjective things in there. But I think there's a couple areas like the existing grade where we can establish the standard, 6 feet. If it's more than 6 feet, then you have to do site plan review.
Which is what the sentence
Says, right?
above it says. Any deviation from
It
these
doesn't,
criteria.
because that thing says change minimum. So any departure from existing grade of more than 6 feet, typically departing from existing grade by no more than 6 feet, resulting in it. So the original language there is kind of like, it's there's no objective standard to measure it against,
If you take out the word typically,
except. Okay,
Existing grade should be changed typically no more than 6 feet.
6 feet, period.
yeah,
And if it is, then you
take out
have to do
minimally
site
and
plan review.
typically.
Okay, so you are just wanting clarification on what the threshold is?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm
I
fine with that
want to get
language.
rid of the subjective words.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
establish
Okay.
an
So it
objective thing, and then the subjective comes from us.
So yeah, it sure does.
And we realize that, I mean, we see multiple times, right? The subjective thing can get
I just,
litigated.
Yep, so Chris just put existing grade should be,
oh, changed,
Should be
sorry.
should be changed
changed.
by no more than 6 feet.
From
And
existing
result
grade.
in
By no more.
a balance in cuts and fills.
And results and. That results.
And if it is more than 6 feet, then you do site plan review.
Right?
John, that sentence that says, except for basement and cellars excavation, you don't think having that language in there would allow Barrington Brook?
For the excavation of that, but not for the walking out.
But why? Because it's a
Because it
cellar.
doesn't say that.
Well, then they'd have to do
It's a
site plan review.
cellar, but it's a cellar or a basement. And
So
you're
We could
excavating
say
for the
basements
basement.
including walkouts.
This doesn't say you can't do that. This says if you conform to these standards, you don't have to do site plan review. That's basically what it says. So,
Right.
I think,
Well, I think what it's saying is that the building around, the ground around the building is 6 feet. But that you can obviously go down 6 or 8 or 10 feet for a basement.
Okay, all right. I think this is one of the things that is not tremendously substantive.
Okay, let's go on.
That we could
I,
still refer to the site, because our goal here is to refer these. to the
when are we
select
gonna do it?
board.
We keep putting this off every week. Let's just do it. Let's go through this stuff.
We're going through it.
Okay, well, then
I'm
let's
saying
not say
that
we're
we
gonna put
don't
it
have to
over.
like litigate 6 feet versus 8 feet. I'm saying that's one of those things we could get some public comment, see if anybody else has any feedback, and then we could make that change then.
Can you
But let's
please
continue
please
going.
note the tone and voice of the board?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're cranky because we're on 3 hours, so
right. It's already.
go ahead, Jonathan. What's your next one?
Okay, item 6.4.5.1.
Yeah, with Kim.
When you're talking about pedestrian access, I would add parking in there. Because it doesn't say pedestrian access from parking.
Where's that?
Number
Number
3,
three.
6.5,
Oh, three, okay.
number 3, pedestrian should be provided among all facilities on the site between them and the street and between them and adjacent premises developed for uses open to the public. Where are you suggesting adding parking?
Somewhere in there, because I think pedestrian access from parking is
Yeah, I mean, it says
a
facility.
driving force.
Facilities
Facilities
on
on
the
the
site,
street.
including parking?
Sure, whatever.
But it's not whatever, because it will get edited again.
Okay.
So what have we got here? We've got. Including parking. Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, do you have anything on number 4, Jonathan?
I do.
Is it number
Sure.
Number 2 on this
Hmm.
wastewater disposal system. What is that? Is that septic? Is that,
Mhm. On-site wastewater disposal is also known as septic.
it's septic?
Mhm.
So. I mean, why do we even have that in there? Because we've got Board of Health that has to certify
I
that.
think
Because
we
it's in our
said
site
that in
plan.
our site plan. It's just a carryover from site plan. I would need to cross-check that, but I think that's just a carryover. Yeah,
Okay, I have another comment.
yes, Malcolm, go ahead.
All houses have hazardous chemicals.
Mhm.
And so we can't say any operations on the premises involving use, storage, or handling of and containment of hazardous substances.
If you'd like to add accepting de minimis amounts, that would be the
And we have
industry.
language already in the file in in the bylaw that
What's
referenced
your
in
proposal,
the,
Okay, any operations on the premises involving the use of, okay, I borrowed a phrase actually from.
Water
from-
quality.
yeah, from water, and water quality, there's
In
a phrase,
quantities greater than those associated with normal
household use, that's it.
Okay. Number 5, drainage control shall be specifically
Yeah.
designed for the site based on the project and site's characteristics. And such controls shall be detailed on application documents.
Okay.
Number 5.
Number 5 in that same list. Did you have any comments? Jonathan?
Sorry, what?
Did you have any comment on number 5, drainage control?
A number,
We're looking at still at design standards. 6.4.5.
I'm looking at number 5, under 6.4.4.
6.4.5,
The
number.
removal of trees 6 inches caliber or larger shall be discouraged and shall require replacement.
He's in number 8.
Number 8.
He's on number 8.
What are you looking at?
What, is yours different than mine?
Right here.
Oh geez, you're missing like,
Yeah, you're not
Four
looking at the latest.
I don't know, Jonathan.
He's missing language to review.
I didn't give it all. You get smaller.
Number 4, the same. There's having- And then we've got drainage controls, consideration of visibility, lighting,
That's not in.
and then removal of all proposed projects. Yeah, so, okay, so you don't have any comments on 5, 6, and 7, but let's read them real quickly so that you can make comments on them.
I don't have.
So number 5, it's up on the screen. Mr. Rumble has kindly please sit there. Drainage controls shall be specifically designed for the site based on the projects and the site's characteristics, and
Yeah, no,
such
that's
controls shall be detailed on application document. 6 is consideration shall be made to
That's fine.
obscure the visibility of parking,
That's fine.
and lighting shall comply with 6.4.5 of this bylaw. Is that a circular reference?
It was just
It should-
highlighted because I don't know what.
And
section.
also,
It should be the next section.
on 6,
6.4.6.
on 6, you might add from public ways and abutting properties.
That one's a little tougher, isn't it? Because we don't generally get into the middle of neighbor relations.
Well, we just did tonight.
And premises
Yeah.
residentially,
Yeah,
throw that in, that's fine.
yeah, that's the language that's in the secretary.
Is it used residentially or?
Residentially.
All right,
Residentially used.
okay, so let's go down to number 8 then.
Wait, hold on, so I think number 7, Pedro was right, it's 6.4.6,
But we'll figure that out later.
right? And then number 8,
So this is-
8, so. If I buy a wooded house site and want to build a house, you're gonna tell me I shouldn't cut down trees?
No, you should get a
6-inch
site plan
caliber,
review.
6-inch calibers, and I have to replace them? I mean, come on.
Okay, I have a suggestion for this one. That we say all proposed projects, the removal of trees 6-inch or caliber, requires site plan review.
Oh, that's crazy.
yeah, penalizes wooded lots, I sort of agree with that.
I mean, we're talking about 2 or 3 bedroom things.
What are you gonna do on a wooded lot with site plan review?
You have a site plan review. You have to have a site plan review. It's not that you
But
can't
number
do.
8 doesn't say you can't do it. It says it's discouraged and you should replace it.
Well,
feasible.
and shall require replacement. That means you have to do it.
No.
Is, as is feasible.
For the site.
See, that, we might as well not even have it. If we're gonna have it, if we're gonna have words like discouraged and feasible, but it's not a standard.
I'm fine with striking removal of trees shall be discouraged entirely.
Well, I think on some projects, you want it,
I think we should have site plan review if they're gonna remove trees.
No, I mean,
For a 2 or 3
Is there-
family house.
is there a way to communicate that the board discourages the removal of trees on site so that we don't get Bald Mountain, Barrington Brook again? You know what I mean?
No, I understand what you're saying, but the reality of you know, buying a lot and building a house, this is pretty limiting.
I've built on lots where we cleared minimal amounts of trees. We've lost some of them.
I've had trees fall on my house, and I said, Malcolm. Not necessarily a good thing.
This is as much a, like a land use problem as a climate change problem. If we just say state that we discourage it. I mean,
Yeah, so just put a
anything,
period
any
after
problem with that.
discourage.
Yeah.
Put a period after discourage and strike the rest of it.
Sure, yeah, that'd be better.
That's just guidance, then it's not really
Yeah.
a standard.
And then under lighting,
We've moved on now, that's good.
the second line, controlled glare and light trespass, comma, to minimize obtrusive light, comma, to conserve energy resources.
While maintaining the safety and
Yeah.
visibility.
Yeah. Under number 3 there. Do we have to use luminance instead of illumination or illuminance? We've got luminance and illuminance, those are both pretty selectively used words. We could put in illumination.
We can tweak that. I don't know what we'll do.
And lights can be dimmed to, I'd say not more than, instead of not more than 50%, say 50% or less. Okay.
What's the word you want to use? You want to use 50% or less, but in terms of lumens. Yeah.
Oh,
The word illuminates at the very end.
illumination.
See, the thing about luminance is that it is a photometric measure.
Yeah,
And so that's why I chose that word.
Yeah, that should be, you guys can debate that over coffee. Yeah.
You crossed out 2, you need to keep 2 in there. Dim to 50% or less.
Okay, could we go on to Article 4?
wait, you have nothing in three?
To
You
more
want to put
more than
footnotes that we
50%.
want?
Leave the word to, that's it. That's good.
Get rid of van.
I didn't do that.
There was something or less.
Dim to 50% or
50%
less
or less.
lumens.
Thank you. Good, John.
You're on Article 4?
Yeah, I didn't. I forgot.
Jeez, I don't know. That's not it. I can tell you that.
2 and 3 unit residential uses?
Yeah, I didn't have any modifications of that.
All rights reserved. Me neither.
We got Article 5.
50.
So, under required trees. Can I plant trees in the right of way?
No, it's not your property.
I understand that, but to satisfy this. I mean, if you've got a 10-foot building setback, you're gonna put a tree in 10 feet between a sidewalk and a house? I don't think so.
We have a lot more to talk about in Stockbridge Road, but that's part of it. Is, you know, where do you draw, where's the property line, or the building line draw?
That's still an open question.
Yes.
Stockbridge Road.
It is.
But, well, for instance, in the, what is it, the MX, not the MX, the Stockbridge, the
B2F?
State road or South Main?
State Road. State Road, we have a very small setback and, you know, where are they gonna plant trees?
So we don't have any trees. State
Also
road.
have, yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
9 o'clock.
Is this
what?
specific to Stockbridge Road?
Yes, this is Stockbridge Road.
This is Stockbridge Road, Horticulture Square.
Right.
So, so.
No, this is Route 7.
Oh, it's Route 7.
Yeah.
So no.
Chris,
And South Main Street.
Chris, did you choose the 50-foot because it's the smallest width of the lot?
No, we
Oh, I chose 50 foot because that's what it used to be.
we
before
discussed
was changed on
it.
town
Yeah,
meeting
we
floor.
said it's not realistic to require it every 25 feet because of lot width. and the need for driveways, which are gonna take out 25 or 30 feet of frontage anyway. So why don't we sort of, I think we arbitrarily just said, why don't we just cut it in half so that we don't have,
No, it is
Such a
from
requirement.
Belcher Square, so it doesn't include state road.
right? So it was
It's
really
Route
more
7
just,
north from Belcher Square.
like,
and
the-
Route 7
the example that
south from
comes to
Taconic
mind.
Avenue.
say that again.
No,
I'm
this
sorry.
is-
So the Route 7,
Landscaping.
the Route 7 landscaping, it only applies to Route 7 north of Belcher Square and south of Taconic.
Yeah.
If you read the book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It doesn't include downtown and state.
Yeah.
Okay. But still, it's
Yeah.
it's an issue when, if you want to create a street wall. And you still want to plant trees, where the hell do you plant them?
Well, I think it's an issue for the overall discussion of Stockbridge Road though, too.
But let's not lose sight of the fact that we've run into this issue several times where the applicants have had trouble complying with the requirement of 25 feet. We may need to amend this again.
Yeah,
but-
what I'm saying is,
50 feet is fine, it's a question of.
I just don't want to throw it out, so
if we do something, on Stockbridge Road, then I think we should look at, what the setbacks are, where the trees have to go and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, I agree, but I think that needs to be a
But I
separate.
think if we're not gonna do something in Stockbridge Road this year, then I think we should do this.
I think we should do this number 5, please.
Strongly recommended.
So,
Can we, stick with- so
Transmit.
nobody has any,
send.
okay, so Article 5, we're fine with that one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like the only thing we need to work out
Is
is
luminance.
a little bit of language in aluminum. And Article 1, definitions.
Yeah.
How to deal with humans. In a respectful way.
But isn't that kind of the point too? When you take out family, you're not trying to define it,
Yeah.
right?
That's the point.
Aren't you just trying to like let the space, the people live in the space,
Yeah.
whoever the people are?
We're trying to make inclusivity in housing.
And so that's why I think when we, like, we're again, we're trying to limit it to one pod, right, of people. And do we really want to do that?
Okay, maybe we don't even need to include the people. Maybe what it is, single family is one dwelling unit. More than one, two family is two dwelling units,
I
three
think,
families,
But-
3 dwelling units.
But what we're taking out is we're taking out the families. If you
Well,
just-
one single unit,
We're just gonna let the size of the unit determine how many people, like, and the people decide how many people wanna live there.
But the point is.
You're worried about like shoving up more people than should be in the space of the people, but I think that's, do we wanna define
No.
that in zoning?
No,
Because that's exclusive.
no, and that's what I'm saying, is it's not about the people, it's about the number of dwelling units in the
Yeah.
building.
I
Yeah.
think in general, it sounds like what we can do is we can just strike all the language in all these definitions that pertain to like trying to put a structure around the number or relationship of the
Yeah.
people.
Let's see what it looks
Just
Yeah.
dwelling unit.
And just
One
deal with dwelling.
dwelling
Yeah.
unit, two
That's
dwelling
what,
units.
that's what I'm trying to, that's actually what I'm trying to do.
Cool.
I will circle back with Chris on that.
There's no people. The only
It-
relationship to
so let
people
me-
is that something's dwelling there.
Let me ask a question. If we receive Jonathan's edits, if we did not capture them all, and if Chris and I remove the people from the dwelling unit definition.
Again, did you get that?
Yeah.
Remove the people from. the
Planning
dwelling
board is
unit.
against people.
Great Barrington Planning Board is trying to remove the people from the
Just
dwelling
for
unit.
Bill's benefit, I want to say on the record that the purpose of this is to eliminate the outdated term family, which can discriminate against non-nuclear family.
Yes.
Non-married
I think
couples,
that's good.
homes, et cetera.
And we're even taking, we are going a
So,
step further though.
Like literally, just to be clear about the
Yeah.
time we're spending tonight, can I just work with,
Yeah.
are you guys, so if we
Yeah,
make those edits, are we okay sending articles 1 through 5 to the select board?
Yeah, I am.
Yes.
Can we have a motion to that effect?
moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Pedro. Motion made and seconded.
Who
Thank
seconded?
Sure.
Jeremy.
Oh,
Poor Kim, I know. we
Kim.
need to
I couldn't hear you.
Kim.
You're the next one.
I know.
The mask is very
Supposed to get away.
muffling.
It is muffling. You're not as clear as you normally are. But I respect the fact that you're wearing it, so
Yeah.
thank you.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Can I ask,
But
Yeah.
two of you to recuse yourself, so I have something to do?
Yeah, you have a
I-
lot to
I
do, you just
can,
can't vote.
But I just can't vote. I don't know.
Yeah. Are you gonna
Well, you
vote?
have, actually, you have all the power of convincing.
You can lobby me.
Forgot I could convince you.
You can convince.
That's what you used to do.
I mean, you can add and then, were you in favor of that motion, Jackie? I'm sure a
Yeah, how do you
parenthetical
feel about
reference
the
in the minutes could
family,
be included.
removing families from?
I think that's critical.
Critical to remove families from dwelling units in Cape May.
It's the word.
Jackie came
Okay.
with a K.
I'm gonna say that we have completed 7B 1 through 5, and those are being referred to the select board. We had a motion and a second, but we never voted on it, did we, Kim? Yeah. So if we don't have any further discussion on the matter, no.
Aye.
Aye, Jonathan.
Aye.
Aye.
Jackie?
I feel strongly about it.
Oh.
There we go.
Aye.
Aye.
Jeremy, I, Brandy, I. Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys. So then what that leaves are the Stockbridge Road items.
3 hours into a meeting?
Yeah, I just want to say two things. One, Jackie and I met for an hour or so last week, and I thank Jackie for bringing like a really fresh perspective to looking at Stockbridge Road. She asked a lot of good questions, and it made me go back to my husband and say, blah, 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 and ask him some questions and get some more sort of like person that doesn't deal with zoning and building all the time perspective. Coupling Jackie's perspective with some information from Pedro, maybe Malcolm and Chris on some opportunity to potentially utilize some technical assistance from BRPC. I think maybe we should table Stockbridge Road for this town meeting and do a little bit more work to get some graphic renderings to help communicate what we're doing. I personally am feeling very queasy about 5 stories. I've been trying very hard to look at that space. I've been traversing it a lot over the last couple of weeks. I've been going to places where there are 5-story buildings and looking at them in terms of massing, and then coming back and trying to imagine them in that corridor. And I think it's an extremely dramatic change. And I'm not saying it's a bad change. I just think it's a very dramatic change and may need a lot more education time and communication time than we have at present. That's my proposal to you guys, is to.
I agree with that, and I agree with it because we've been viewing Stockbridge Road as a zoning issue. But it's much more than a zoning issue. I mean, we can zone, many dwelling units there, and maybe they'll get built. But if they build hundreds of dwelling units on Stockbridge Road without fixing the pedestrian problem, we've got a real problem on our hands. If there's hundreds of new residents there, we may have to triple the number of parking spaces because nobody's going to be able to walk in and out of those places. So I think we have a bigger problem in the whole idea of that corridor and what it looks like landscape wise. Where is the right of way? Who's going to build the trees? Is it really the town that needs to build the trees because of the width of the right of way, or is it or put the burden on the businesses?
It's the state right away.
Well, they can, even if they don't have to. But, I think the state has to be engaged because it's a state highway. I don't know what rights we have as a town of putting crosswalks there.
Jackie made a really good point about community outreach and education, and it may be something that we want to pitch as a soft, like we're thinking about doing this, and then maybe get a couple of working groups together to do some more interactive engagement of the public, because it would be a very, very dramatic conversion.
Do you have time to do, I'm not saying, let's say we take it off of this year's, do we have time to start that before this year's town meeting? Because I know, like, everything gets compressed when we start,
Yeah,
you know, in August or whatever,
yeah.
and,
Why not start?
yeah, I mean, I think since we have like,
It's a soft launch.
we have good momentum.
Yeah,
And then because town meeting's coming up, people will just assume it's gonna be on town meeting, they might.
well, I think we have to be, yeah, I mean, I think we have to be clear about that. I don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah, yeah.
create turmoil.
No, but I think more people are thinking about these things as town meeting.
Sure.
But I think, I mean, if we're gonna look at this, we have a real opportunity to look at that Stockbridge Road as the kind of corridor that Pedro's been talking about. I've
Yeah.
always been on the board, and I think, but I don't think it's just a zoning issue. I think
Well,
it's much more than.
and interestingly, I tried to have a conversation, just asking a random person who has no, no like development or design experience, kind of what they thought about that as an idea. And they immediately went to who's building that project. And so it became immediately like a thing that was going to happen. And I was like, no, this is just like a visioning exercise. And so I think there's a lot of communication and messaging and education that is going to need to go into something like this. And we may benefit from, as Jackie said, kind of like a
Well,
side.
I think it's also good for us to do it too. I mean, I just ran into the word strode. Has anybody, apart from the people I've shared it with? I mean, it's a word that was developed in 2011 by a planning guy who used to be a DOT guy. And it talks about, well, what is this street road?
Yeah.
Because are we trying to just move, it's like downtown, but downtown resolved it, but this is an area that is at once a road and and we're trying to make it a street, which is all about community. And so I'm thinking two models, the Champs-Élysées is one and Chico, California's Esplanade. I mean, two extremes, but the whole notion of how do you make it human? I mean, how do you protect the human being from, and children and whomever on the street side? And people in cars who just want to get through there, but now they're nervous because it's all this stuff with kids and stuff. And the resolutions of these things, setback's not the only issue here. So it's like, I think it's, there's so many questions, it begs so many questions. That's what it does.
It's, Stockbridge Road has been a conversation of community efforts and business efforts for, well, not recently, but in the past. I think one of the reasons you have that cap on retail in Great Barrington is because of people in the 90s who got together and were thinking about Stockbridge Road and how it could be developed. There's a whole zoning or planning study, which I probably still have a copy of. If,
I think it's gonna.
well, I think it's got to come up
Yeah.
anyway. I think it came from Eileen's old files. So it's, I think it's a good idea. I think it will be well received and I think it's a good move for the board to seek some assistance and have a good plan for outreach.
Well, I gotta say that I've been trying to push this for 4 years. We did technical assistance with the RPC last year and it got us nowhere. It showed us exactly what we wanted. For the record, I never proposed 5 stories. I proposed 4 stories. We run the risk right now. There is, and everybody sitting on this table knows what I'm talking about, of a person going in who's been investing on Stockbridge Road is going to go in there and put big box stores up. It's going to happen. We have no control over how the street works or dealing with DOT, or only thing we can control is the zoning. And if the zoning is not in place to incentivize some kind of change there, it's never going to happen. If we put the zoning in place and we tell the state, hey, we want to do this, can you come in and help us, deal with the road? It's probably more likely that we're going to get some assistance over there.
I don't buy that.
But it's totally true. They're not gonna do, the state or nobody who's gonna be in charge of that road is gonna move before they see some incentive from the town. That's how it works.
It definitely has to go from the town.
I totally don't think we're gonna get anything more from BRPC than what we already know. I mean, it's gonna be another year and then this slow move to the community. Everyone in the community is gonna be freaked out about it. I think that we need to take a stand and say, we need to build housing in this town. We only have one place to do it, which is this corridor. Because I don't want the rest of the farmlands being taken up by houses. and other types of housing, which you can't even build out there anyway.
That is
We have
exactly,
the infrastructure set in place all along the corridor from South Main all the way up. We just need, we need to, as a board, decide that this is what we need to do, because right now you can't do it.
I agree with your vision, and I agree that that corridor is prime for it. I don't think we have settled on the
Because
massing.
frankly, we haven't really sat down at this board and discussed Stockbridge Road.
Yeah,
We haven't.
It's a
We-
big,
I
and it's not
But
just
that, give
us.
me a good
Okay,
excuse
can I-
why we won't discuss it,
Yeah,
not
let
that
me
it's
just jump-
too big of a change, because that's what we need. What we have now is not working, everybody. It's not
Yeah,
giving
but
us
we
housing.
cannot
It's
force
producing a problem.
something on a whole bunch of people. We'll just get it, it'll just get voted down. I
So
am.
what would we proposing on Stockbridge Road?
Can
I-
I chime in with?
Development, people living there instead of just
Pedro.
having uses there that are closed more than half of the time?
Pedro,
More
you,
hotels? Do we
have-
need more hotels along Stockbridge Road? Because
Pedro.
this is what's going to happen, I'm telling you,
Pedro.
if we don't move.
I hear what you're saying, but you have an architect's mind and are able to envision in 3 dimensions what could be there. 95% of the population cannot do that, and I think we have to physically take graphics of what could potentially be there to help communicate it. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, I'm just saying we cannot get this together in the amount of time we have.
And, okay, I'm gonna jump in
Sure, go ahead.
2 feet. Basically, I feel like I'm working on this now with you guys. I don't know why it would not continue and go forward and drive itself. Go forward, make it happen. If you're dealing with something like, there's about to be a big box store landing on our laps before we even get to talk to the community about it. Are there any zoning laws or bylaw changes that could be put in place? This is what I'm talking about. This is the tactical
That's a
thing.
New York thing, I don't know if you can do that.
Is this kind of like a tactical solution?
Yeah, can we put a moratorium on development in place in that corridor?
But a moratorium is technically a zoning bylaw amendment to tell you,
Okay,
so you'd have to do that.
yeah,
I don't know why you would. I mean, there are
yeah.
big box controls. You can do it.
Well, I was just wondering if there are controls to address Pedro's concern.
Well, no,
Somebody's about to come in and do
Well,
something
also-
obnoxious.
In light of that comment, there are 5 empty storefronts
Mhm.
that have been.
And how
empty
many
for like-
lots for sale?
That have been empty for like 5 years.
And how many lots are for sale on Stockbridge right now?
No, I'm talking about in the shopping center.
Oh, the shopping center, like, yeah.
Yeah, the 5 empty storefronts.
So what are you saying? There's not commercial demand?
it's not a commercial demand.
It's not, that's not what we're demanding here in town.
No, I understand, but you're saying the threat is that the commercial development, I'm just pointing out.
Because
that We have all of these
I don't
empty
know, but
storefronts.
it's different to have different mom and pop stores than to have a Dollar General or a Walmart or something come in. It's different. And that's potentially what could happen.
Walmart's not gonna happen. Yeah, Dollar General.
I'm not saying, but you know.
Yeah.
It's the type of store that you can get. It's quick, it's fast and profitable. And cheap. And you can do that. And it's by right, basically.
My point in suggesting that we hold this off is not to stop it, because the corridor is prime for development. It's where we want density to happen. But I just don't think we are in a space where we can sell it to the public in the amount of time that we've got. And I think we need some renderings.
On that, we'll disagree. So we can move on. It's fine. Since I'm in the minority here.
Can I ask a question, about, why we're just focusing on the Stockbridge Road corridor and not, we're starting at the
Ask
bridge?
them.
Oh,
What do you mean?
And
Ask
starting
them.
at the
Because
bridge, you
my-
all the way to Belcher Square.
My
and making
original,
all this thing.
my original proposal was from Brookside.
Well, okay, but I'm just thinking from the bridge,
We already updated the
Because you
zoning.
did
there.
that first section to.
so it's already there.
Yeah, and it's a
It's
different
not the
character.
same height,
Jackie.
but
I know it does, I know,
Yeah, it's a
I
different
can
character with the street.
but where I would,
scape
okay, well, I
area.
was just thinking also if we're doing something that changes the setbacks in the trees, or doing any kind of parkification, that's not even a term, but something that separates the residential and the commercial and the walkability area that we're trying to develop.
Right.
And Route 7 if there's something that's really clearly defined, I'm making this up as I go along, but that's clearly defined visually. And all of a sudden you turn a corner, you pass the Sunoco and you're in a different world.
Mhm.
I mean, just thinking of these transition periods in
Mhm.
places, how
Well-
that works. And so all of a sudden, I mean, we're just dealing with, I'm just trying to get us to the bridge with some kind of continuity and then you're into downtown.
Well, it's because the areas are already so different. That's why they're broken up. The way we've broken them up, like that section from the bridge to Belcher Square is very different from Belcher Square until the Holiday Inn. And so that's why we're like, that's why it's broken up because of what's already existing. And so, I mean, it seemed like that was the exercise we were on. I mean,
Well,
it was
that's
proposed
like
originally.
I'm worrying about the art before divorce and all that stuff, but anyway,
What do you have there now, Judge?
what do I have?
In what way does
here?
Stockbridge Road look like anything else in that?
So
Oh,
it's
well,
not
no, in
Belcher-
my mind's
Belcher
eye,
Square.
I'm imagining something that may not ever be possible, but I'm imagining something like a green swatch on either side of Route 7 and having, you know, so I'm thinking about the model of like Chico's Esplanade.
Chris, it's like what we saw in Complete Streets, right? So when we were going through the Complete Streets thing, how to turn streets, how to slow down traffic, how to make it like there's activity happening on the street. And I mean, yeah, and you're right, there's like a green promenade right in the middle of the street, which you conceivably could do on Stockbridge Road because you got the width.
No, it's just, I don't know if we've had that conversation because it's just, we're all,
So
I know what you're
normally
saying.
what we do process wise is we identify a corridor for zoning modifications. And we either go as a group or individually and we try and like boots on the ground assessment, like what do we all see in that corridor? And so we've done this a couple of times. We did
Yeah, 3 times, we did Housatonic,
yeah,
then we did South Main, and
Yeah.
then Street, State Road.
yes, yeah, I was trying to think of all the names of the zones, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't know
you've
what
got
the-
the geographies right.
Yeah, the geography.
So that's the process we've been following, and we try and acknowledge what is the current character, what are the current limitations as far as the highway right away. What do we see that looks promising, what offers opportunity? So each corridor has got different characteristics, and we've tried to expand development opportunities and add characteristics that improve walkability, all consistent with our master plan or complete street elements. To the extent that we can do that through establishing street wall lines or planting zones or different components. So that's the way we've gone so far. Stockbridge Road, I think our assessment has been that it's like a mishmash. And so it doesn't really have strong characteristics, but it has bigger lots, it has very robust infrastructure, so it has a huge amount of potential. But we have to acknowledge we live in an area where we really need a car, so we've got to find that parking balance. You know, we're not, even under the best circumstances, probably going to be able to get 95% of the people to get up their cars. So, but I think there's a question of massing, and I would disagree, Pedro, that we haven't had discussions. We have had discussions for many years, and up until I sat with Jackie and then started talking to a few people, I thought we should be pushing this through, but I'm taking a pause because the early feedback I'm getting is that people are like, whoa, what are you doing? And
But
I
they're
don't,
always gonna be like that, Brandy and people that.
I'd
they're always
rather
gonna
try
be-
and
Everybody's gonna be
build
scared.
those
I'm not convinced though. I mean, I think there are a lot of rational people who could
Listen,
hear the idea.
the point is, when we go home, when we all lock the doors here and we go home, we're gonna have the same regulations in place. The MXD is a no-go. Nobody's ever going back there to do multifamily. So you guys can all forget about that. And we have the same regulations and the same process that has gotten us into this housing crisis. Every time I leave this meeting, I'm thinking the same thing. Every time. So we've done a lot of good things on this board, no question. But in the end, for building at a mass scale, the process is a humongous problem, and we're not gonna get anybody coming in with the current process. And I'm sorry, but there's no real good incentive for anybody, for a developer to go into these areas that are ripe for development.
So
Go in there
Peter, what's
and do a
going to
project.
prevent where you are right now from happening next year, but the people get behind you?
I
Or is
don't know,
that-
Jackie, but you know what? The things on this board take a long time, and I've been pushing this for 4 years now. So I'm a little frustrated.
Well,
That's understandable.
And
All
to
right.
your point about like how we can really change the street, where we don't control, right, the street in the right way.
Oh,
And so we can't, like, you know, and so having buildings, tall buildings encroach upon the street is one way to slow down traffic. And so that's one of the ideas, because right now it's just, that's for, you know, Stockbridge Road is for people to get through. And so, you know, before you can have that kind of interaction where you're having some kind of street activity, you gotta slow down the cars.
Well, see,
And
with-
one of our only tools is to do that because we don't have, because it's a state road, so we can't just build a green promenade through the
No,
middle of
I
it without
absolutely
the
totally
state being like,
understand Route 7,
Yeah.
but the word that got me was walkability.
yeah.
I don't know, you know, walkability along Route 7 doesn't seem like a fun thing to
Well,
do.
also, we don't control the
Because
sidewalk.
nobody lives on Route 7.
No, I wouldn't want to put my.
Seriously,
my
who
not
drives
family
somewhere?
Somewhere.
Who drives somewhere to walk?
I mean, I used to walk it, when I worked at the top of Railroad Street, I used to walk it every day.
No,
I
I-
mean, even when I rode my bike and I walked my bike home.
I'm
And so-
walking these weird parts of Great Barrington and going, wow, I didn't know there's 3 Stanley tributes in this one little piece of land. And then I'm walking in another area and discovering, oh my God, I can't get from there to here, but I can climb over this and I can get there. I mean, I love to do
Let's-
that. but-
Let's do this. Let's table the discussion here until we can put it on the next agenda. But I mean, we're not gonna solve this right now.
Can't we go until midnight? I'm just kidding.
We can, but Kim will fall over. and so will you.
Kim
And
will
I might.
resign if we go too much farther.
You never know. And so item C was discussion of zoning bylaw amendments governing multi-unit dwellings, development sites and all. This is sort of like a standing one we've got, Chris. I sug-
Lighting.
I
that's what-
suggest we change.
Did Eileen have, I mean, we.
Oh, I'm sorry,
ignoring it.
Eileen. I totally lost track of the fact that you'd raised your hand. I apologize.
Well, 2 things. I raised my hand because on 256, it says consideration should be given to not exposing dumpsters and so forth.
Consideration should be given to,
Yeah,
can you say that one more time, please?
okay. It said consideration should be given to not allowing dumpsters to be seen. Except
Oh, okay.
that consideration is a mental process. So if I'm a developer, I can look at that and say, hey, it would cost me $250 to hide the dumpster. I'm not going to do it. But I complied with the requirement because I did indeed consider this.
You are
So I would
correct.
suggest that you have a more
more acting. Okay, thank you. That's a fair comment. Thank you.
there is going to be.
Did you say you had 2 items?
Right, here's the second one. There is going to be a special town meeting at some point to vote on the school. Vote on the school and also to vote on the school merger. People might not want another article, but it is going to happen late this year, probably.
You want us to muddy up the school activity with the zoning meeting?
I leave that up to you.
We get enough anger at the normal town meeting.
Thank you for that suggestion, Eileen. That's a nice potential compromise.
I just like,
It's
yeah,
definitely an effective.
just a little
strategy,
reminder.
like one or the other. I don't know which one is gonna help, but.
If we were gonna make an amendment to 7.2, that might be a good time to do it.
We will have to think about that. How the rest of the world transpires in that respect.
Some over here on
Okay,
school done.
so we don't have any draft language to consider for shared living arrangements, right?
There's
No.
there's a definition. Sorry, Chris.
No, I was just gonna say some of the definition changes would help in that. regard.
Yeah.
There's
There's
one
one
thing
in the
is,
building code that defines
Mhm.
congregate living.
Okay.
and there is some interest in that, right, beyond Windflower.
I guess that's what I'm thinking. Does it need to be taken up?
You wanna look at that next week?
Yeah, let's do that in terms of just some of the things we've been hearing from Comstar.
So would
Can you share
Windflower
that
be
definition?
allowed in? Great Barrington? Would the Windflower project be allowed? in
That's,
Great
I think that's the question. is we should
It's
consider.
only allowed because it's got some special permit criteria that
Because of
allows it
being
to be
Because it's
a hotel or.
because it's an inn.
In Egremont.
No,
Oh, it's in Great
But that's
Barrington. If another property came up that didn't have that special status, they would not be allowed. They already had that special status. Not a congregate living special status, but the ability to rent, you know, on a month to
Individual.
month.
Basically like an inn.
Short term.
Okay, yes, please, Chris, if you don't mind adding that. Okay, so then, item 8, board and subcommittee updates, issues and concerns, Jared.
I don't know, did we have, I don't think we've had a meeting since the last time, so I think we're still in the same place.
Okay, hey, John.
Nothing.
Jackie, we don't have you assigned to any subcommittees or anything yet, do we?
No.
Okay, we'll do that next. I don't have anything to do with anything. Malcolm?
No, nothing.
We did have a housing subcommittee.
We had a housing subcommittee meeting, and,
Tuesday.
we're looking at, advancing some things to the select board. You know, here, what we're considering here. Also had a Berkshire Regional Planning Commission and Regional Issues Committee meeting, which was very interesting, but I'm not going to shoot time with it. I'll report on it next time.
Okay.
Because it's interesting, you're not gonna share.
It's very interesting. Yeah, just to,
You're
yeah.
gonna help.
Yeah,
He's gonna bogart it. like-
Well, you know, well, I'll just give you a teaser. I mean, you know, the thing is, it doesn't really apply to us. It's about the manpower crisis in the county. You know, and the ability, the problems with hiring people and getting volunteers for boards. And, you know, what can be done about it? And so, you know, the BRPC is taking it up in the regional issue committee, but it's really more of an issue for the select boards and the town managers. And they were involved in the last meeting, and it was very interesting. It was a good meeting. Hopefully, things will progress from it.
Like a myriad of things piled on top of one another.
Yeah, but there's several different approaches, you know, whether the RPC itself could pick up more things, or whether the towns could continue to, you know, maybe through a facilitator, continue to engineer shared services. We also heard from Franklin County, which has a council of governments, which is closer to a county government, but not a county government. It's, and so they can provide more services, more shared services. So there are different options to go through.
There's always Plymouth
What about Plymouth?
for parking tickets.
Oh, geez. Actually. So anyway, that was interesting, and it was, but, you know, that's.
Okay, cool. We'll look forward to hearing more then. Chris, any planners report beyond what you had previously reported? Okay.
Really?
Any citizen speech time?
I have a media question.
Sure.
Immediate or immediate?
Just for the record,
Yeah,
Bill, we
immediate.
support families. And those that look like families are.
You just want to include everyone else.
On the record, you're trying to neutralize people. So I'm Bill Shine for the Berkshire Ed. I do have a question about the airport. So this board has addressed things related to the airport numerous times. And about 2.5 years ago, the last time you considered a special permit along with hangars, but just talking about the special permit for a second. You did also send along a positive recommendation to the select board. But you did have some other things that I wanted just to read it to you. You had a sentence that said, "We recommend the select board require documentation about the airport's use and handling of hazardous materials. And in granting a special permit, consider limitations on the overall air traffic volume and limitations on the type of aircraft so that the expansion of operations and or aircraft volume would require a review of a special permit."
And you're citing that from like 2020?
That was our recommendation.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
yeah, your recommendation in 2020. So, and you had a much more involved conversation in 2020 about those issues than you did tonight. So I guess it's really a question for the four of you that are the same four who considered it last time. If there's something different about your consideration of a special permit, that you would not include those things this time around, is something for the select board to look at.
I'll speak for the board if I may. It's just that the applications are different. Last time it included hangars.
Yeah, this was specifically about the special permit part of it and not the hangar part.
Which included hangars.
That was what.
So,
It did.
this year,
That was the,
this year,
So there's a distinction between, okay. So those don't not concerns any longer, the hazardous waste or traffic?
actually, I don't have any concerns around the space and traffic, but, I think, the previous special permit, there were concerns about whether they were expanding. And so with the hangars, were they expanding? So I think what you read off there was really more of a, to assuage the expansion issue. And that wasn't an issue this time. They may come back again. I mean, once they get a special permit, maybe they want to, go after the hangars again, but that's a different issue altogether.
So
In terms of environmental protection, though, we are concerned, and I think a number of our questions to the applicant this evening were about how they're operating and whether or not they're maintaining compliance with the state and federal guidelines that they need to comply with. So I think, if we would have heard something differently from the community, from the applicant, we may have had different recommendations, but we're talking about the existing operations.
That's dirty pool. We're gonna bring back what we said before.
Actually, on expansion, because you did talk about expansion 2.5 years ago, not just in the context of adding structures and what that would mean, but you did have a pretty involved conversation about aircraft traffic, in addition to the types of aircraft. But there was a conversation, and I think Malcolm, you had pointed out in that meeting about how much traffic and in flight operations. And that concern was, and in terms of expansion, a little different than just expansion of physical plant and facilities, but
Well, the concern was that adding hangars was going to expand the operations in the airport. And in fact, they had no intention of expanding the operations of the airport any more than they have intention of expanding it now, but that was really the purpose of that question, to get that out. Whether they were going to be using those hangars as a basis for expanding, because that was where some of the opposition was coming from. So that
and when you say expanding, what do you mean?
more, more flights, more planes, more everything.
Great.
But that was not their goal, as I understand it from their answers last time, and it's not their goal this time, is to change their operations.
Well, and we have to evaluate every application on its individual merits, so I think that's all.
Yeah.
That is it.
Okay, great, thanks. I apologize for keeping you guys 4 minutes longer.
No problem. Anything else? Anybody online? Any citizens speak? All right, seeing none, we'll adjourn at 9:41. Thank you, Kim.